Well, before we kick off this episode, I got to tell you, Nature Bee have come up with something dangerous. Their new Power Bee Bite Bars. Chocolate caramel or peanut honey choc chip. They taste so good, you're going to forget they're healthy. Packed with protein, boosted with power pollen, they're perfect for the road, perfect for the shed, perfect for the man cave, perfect anytime you need a quick lift. And they're paired beautifully with your daily power pollen capsules to create the ultimate wellness routine. Links are in the description right now, but stick around, I'll tell you more.
In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide Podcast with Luke Boner. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Hey, g'day and welcome. Can you believe it? Episode 56. That's right, a 5 and a 6. And we didn't think we'd get past episode 2, Millennial. What's going on?
Lord knows. Lord knows.
Hey, listen, do we have some content for you? You need to stay listening right to the very end because there are some surprises around the corner. Now, before I get into it, we are having a tree cut down. Yes, we have council permission. I've got the permit number. So if you hear a chainsaw through the microphone, well, it's real life, Kelsey, isn't it? It's a little slice of suburban life.
Yeah, too bad, so sad. It won't be as loud as Rod loading a trailer, but...
No, that was big. That was big. But to see, what we deliver, Millennial, is a slice of life. And and because you're in charge of the editing, I have no idea what's going to...
Yeah, I protested to such things, but whatever.
All right, so you might hear a chainsaw in the background. We're having a brush box that's dead, completely enveloped by bougainvillea and about to fall on the house. So the blokes, this is their second day. I've got to say this before I give you a heads up as to what's coming. The guy who does this, I'm going to talk to him on the podcast down the track because he's a really interesting bloke because he's finding it frustrating to find workers too and young kids who want to work, and so we'll talk about that. You should see how clever and how skilled these people are. I mean, they are climbing up a huge tree with a few ropes and a helmet and handling a chainsaw. You know, Jacob, your brother, my son, he's a tradie, and I rang Jacob and I said, Jacob, what's the workplace tradie etiquette when it comes to watching people work? He said, what do you mean, Dad? I said, well, if we were having a fence built or something built, there's no way Nikki and I would sit there and watch them. We'd let them go because it puts pressure on. We were transfixed. We're sitting on the back deck watching them attack this tree because it was so interesting. I said, are we allowed to do that? He said, they probably get it because what they do is out there. These arborists are unbelievable.
Yeah. I feel like tree lopping is such a niche trade as well. Like, I feel like there aren't many tree loppers around these days. Maybe there are just less trees.
Or maybe they've just been cut off. I don't know. But you should see these people work. It is just frightening and fascinating. Anyway.
Well, just kind of on that, completely different in terms of the trade, but when I was at uni doing media arts and production, and it's heavily based in film, we were told all the time that when somebody is acting, you look at the floor because as soon as you catch their eye while they're acting,
if I turn my camera,
does the chainsaw noise count as a glitch?
No, it's reality. Coming up, one of the most fascinating women you'll ever hear. Her name is Kerrin Hofstrand, but she was known as Corinne Gay Piper. Now, Kelsey, you're too young to remember A Country Practice, but people my age will remember this iconic television show set in the fictitious Wandon Valley.
You spoke about it with Rob Zammit.
Ah, yes, I did. Well, Corinne is Gordon Piper's daughter. He's now passed away. But he played Bob Hatfield on A Country Practice and was charged with some pretty serious child abuse charges, which were absolutely found to be false. And he was found to have no charges to face. But unfortunately, that's how he may be remembered. I hope not. But this woman was known as the ketamine queen of Australia. She was the first person to import and sell ketamine. And I didn't know about ketamine until Matthew Perry and Elon Musk. And this K-hole that your fiancé, our lovely Nathan, was telling us on holidays in Bali about Elon Musk and this ketamine addiction and the K-hole. Do you remember that conversation? And I didn't know anything about it. Well, we're going to find out about that. But she sold ecstasy. She was very involved in the developing years of the Mardi Gras in Sydney, the sleaze ball parties, and life as a criminal. She went to jail 3 years, life in a women's jail. She talks about that. She talks about addiction. She talks about working in a massage parlor as a bondage matrix.
Wow.
It is one of the most interesting conversations, millennial, I think we've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love how normal she is. Like, she's just the
She's
easiest
71.
person to talk to.
She's 71. She's 71, looks like she knits and looks after grandchildren. The life that she's had is the most extraordinary story. It's compelling listening, and we'd love your comments afterwards.
She's an icon. She's an icon.
Also, Tech Talk with Trevor Long, and we'll talk about Donald Trump and his attempt to silence free speech. We're also going to have the Man Cave, and this time it's not with the Vice Captain, who was bumping into a trade show and couldn't do the recording, but we've got our good mate Scotty Phillips from The Motley Fool, and we talk about life, finance.
And anything that wasn't on the run sheet.
Yeah, we just go off. But it's interesting
I don't think
stuff.
you covered one thing that was on that run sheet.
News updates.
Here's a story that I found, and I had to share it with the millennial because she's engaged. And her wonderful bloke, Nathan, who I love like a son, went to such extraordinary lengths to propose. And the engagement ring is a very, very big part of this. Now, my darling Holly said to her now husband, now I want a big rock. It's got to be a good rock, and don't think of anything under the 10K. Remember that? I'm not lying. An influencer's engagement announcement has gone viral for all the wrong reasons after her happy post was flooded with nasty comments exposing a disappointing truth. Melissa Winkler, a fashion and lifestyle creator from Germany with just 3,500 followers, recently amassed 20 million views on a photograph of her diamond engagement ring. Millennial, tell the folks what's happened.
Well, essentially, they're saying that it's not a real ring because it's so teeny tiny. And I just think that's mean.
It's too size matters.
I think it's more like the effort behind it, and it's contextual as well. If your partner is raking in $1 million a year and gets you a $30 ring, well then you can get lost. But
one person said, could he not afford a proper ring? Looks like a children's cheap ring. Oh, that's harsh. But she's posted it online, so she must have known comments were going to come through. Let me ask you this, Millie. Did you choose your engagement ring, or did Nathan choose it himself?
Nathan actually designed it, and he is a smart boy. So he enlisted the help of some of my best friends to make sure that it was something that I liked. But also, Nathan knows me better than anybody else. So he knew all along kind of the style that I wanted.
Did you give him a budget like Holly did to poor old Tyson?
Of course not. Of course not. I don't even know how much it costs, and I don't want to know because I don't care. Honestly, I would be happier with a cheaper ring because I am not known for keeping things safe for very long.
No, you haven't.
And so having a 10K ring on my finger would be way too much pressure.
Yeah. Of course, if you were trying to hide the core of a half-eaten pear, I know exactly where it is.
Oh, my God, get over it.
Jimmy Kimmel has returned to television, and we all knew that he would. His bosses, Disney and ABC, have said, yeah, well, you better come back. Well, of course, after the tirade of opposition from anyone who supports free speech. Look.
And they also lost $3.6 billion on the stock exchange. So I feel like that's got a little bit of something to do with it.
It has a lot to do with it. They made a huge mistake, and Trump absolutely shot himself in the foot, not the ear, the foot, by trying to ban this bloke because he said something he didn't like or he made a joke that he didn't appreciate. The First Amendment of the United States, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later on with Trevor Long and also Scotty Phillips. It was a massive, massive mistake. And he got a standing ovation when he arrived back. But, of course, everyone in the audience is a Jimmy Kimmel fan. But, of course, he had to come back. Just because somebody says something that's offensive doesn't mean you shut them down.
Yeah.
The First Amendment of the United States is free speech. The second is guns. The first is free speech. Now, I don't think making a joke about somebody who's been tragically assassinated is particularly funny, but you say it, and if you don't like it, you switch off. And then if you have low ratings, well, then you're going to get punted anyway. But you don't force somebody off because they say something that might offend you. So I'm glad he's back. I didn't think the joke was particularly funny, but I've got to tell you this. I do believe that the Republicans used the assassination of Charlie Kirk as a political tool. I do. But if you don't like that, well, don't listen to the podcast. But I'm glad he's back. What did you make of it?
Honestly, I am just constantly dumbfounded by Trump. I'm glad that Jimmy Kimmel is back because otherwise it would have set a really dangerous precedent.
Absolutely. So anyway, you'll hear more about that later on in the podcast. This is the other news, and I got a massive response from our resident GP, Dr. Norrie, the most agreed doctor. And I'll read you what he said because we're going to have Dr. Norrie on the next podcast. Is that correct?
Why not?
That was that the World Health Organization is pushing back against contested claims by the Trump administration that, Tylenol, Panadol can affect...
Acetaminophen.
You saw me dodge around that. Acetaminophen during pregnancy heightens the risk of autism. Now, that has been rejected by nearly every other health authority in the world. I'm going to talk to Dr. Norrie next podcast about that. And the other thing I'll talk to Norrie about is should Ozempic be on the PBS?
Yeah, why not?
Originally designed to help diabetes, now it's being used widely as a weight loss aid. Wait till you hear what he has to say about that. But that's coming up down the track, Kelsey. So Dr. Norrie said, Trump, all wrong, bullshit. ADHD is genetic. I have it. My sons have it. My grandsons have it.
I have it.
Gene brought to Oz by the convicts. Vaccines and autism are association only, i.e. kids first manifested around the same time they get their vaccines, not cause and effect, just association in capital letters. And we're going to talk to Dr. Norrie about that. So anyway, I've got to say, what did you make of the US President Donald Trump arriving at the UN conference in New York, and he steps onto the escalator and it stops? And now you got Caroline Levitt saying it's a conspiracy theory. They did it on purpose, and whoever did it should be sacked. That person should be sacked, and there's got to be an inquiry. And in fact, Trump is actually calling for arrests over the escalator failure in New York. He said, how does he say her name, Melania? She's a fit woman, and if she wasn't in such good shape, she could have fallen over. And me, because I'm in good shape.
Oh, my God.
So
have you seen that man's feet?
Are we led to believe that someone deliberately turned the escalator off? Do you think it was done deliberately?
Oh, I don't know, but I really do not care. But all of this stuff going on in America right now just makes me think that the Epstein files must be really, really, really bad if they're screaming and shouting over things that, I don't think Trump 4 years ago would be making such a hullabaloo over the escalator situation, but everything these days seems to be just completely blown out of proportion, and it just makes me think, what are they hiding? What are they trying to hide? I think the only thing that doesn't count in that is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That was and will forever be an incredibly tragic thing that happened. Oh, it's crazy. It's honestly hard to believe that this is the world that we live in.
So at the dropping of this podcast, we find out now that Anthony Albanese didn't have much luck with Trump at the UN Congress, but he will be visiting the White House on October 20. He says he has a good relationship with the US president. I call bullshit on that. He doesn't have any relationship with him, and this has been the problem. And no Australian representative has had a relationship with Donald Trump since probably Joe Hockey, who knew how to play him. Malcolm Turnbull had success with Trump, knew how to play him. What do you reckon they'll talk about? I mean, you've got AUKUS, you've got Australia's conflicting opinions on recognising Palestine with the US, you've got tariffs, you've got the fact that America is a very valued ally. Australia very much needs the United States as far as a defence umbrella is concerned, but our biggest trading partner is China, and Trump hates that. What do you reckon they'll talk about?
Oh, I don't know. I am so glad not to be a politician.
Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that and we'll report on that and we'll talk to Dr. Keith Suter about that down the track.
What would you talk to him about? Like what would be the first thing?
Have you worked out your slice yet?
What does that mean?
It's a golf thing, Kelsey. I would say, Mr. President, there's an old saying, a good scorer always wins. Gee, you win a lot. There are really important things at stake here. But that photo in the Daily Telegraph, papers all around the place, the Albie selfie with him holding the phone out and Donald Trump looking like a red lost Osmond brother. What did you make of that? It was. Did you find it cringeworthy?
I don't think I've seen it.
Albo Trump selfie. Put it up. Have a look at it. Look at his teeth.
No way.
Look at him. Look at it.
Is that real?
It's real. And why couldn't there be an official photographer? It looks like Albo has found a rock star somewhere and said, "Oh, please, can I have a selfie?" Why wouldn't someone else take that photo? Have a look at his teeth.
I thought it was AI when I first saw it. It looks like it's like AI generated.
Let's say it is.
That is crazy. The contrast between the orangeness of his skin and the whiteness of his teeth is jarring.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Put it up and ask our listeners, what did you make of this? And why a selfie? Why not?
It's because he's trying to be relatable. He's trying to relate to the people by taking a selfie. Man of the people, I take selfies.
Anyway, we've got plenty to come today. So let's hear what you guys had to say. We've got a voice message from Jason. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Luke. Great chat with Barrett's. The thoughts are with him, mate, and he's, what he's going through with his family and his parents, and yeah, it's not good, mate, but yeah, thoughts are with him. He was mentioning about the MCG tour. It's something you just have to do, mate. It is an unbelievable experience for a cricket lover. There's so much memorabilia and there's just so much to look at. The change rooms and the long room is unbelievable. Get to sit in the dressing rooms where the players sit. There's a lot to do in a 45-minute to an hour tour. You'll love it. My suggestion would be to head down to Melbourne a couple of days before Anzac Day. I know how much Anzac Day means to you. Get down to Melbourne, do the tour, spend some time with Barrett's, and then on Anzac Day morning, obviously the dawn service, and then do yourself a favour and get to MCG, Collingwood v Essendon. Atmosphere would be electric.
Jason should be a bloody travel.
Yeah, a travel guide.
Agent.
Oh, no, he's fantastic. Jason, thank you so much. It is on my bucket list. I mean, the MCG is the sporting capital of Australia, possibly the world, one of the world's greatest stadiums. 100,000 people, millennial, get there on the Boxing Day test. I always watch it. And can I... Oh, do I say it? Yeah, I will. Do you remember last Christmas, we had Christmas Day, but you and Nathan came over on Boxing Day?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was you, who was upstairs at the table? It was you and your sister and a few. And Nathan kept saying he had to go to the toilet or go and do. He came down to my man cave and he and I watched as much of the Boxing Day test as we possibly could. And when he heard
naughty.
And then when he heard footsteps, he goes out the back door, around and up the side. And he came down and tried to watch as much of the Boxing Day test with me in my man cave as possible. Anyway, it is a great venue and I've got to do it. Thank you so much, Jason. We've got another voice message. Who's this?
Well, it's actually anonymous.
Okay, here comes anonymous.
Just with the electricity problem, I want to know, as you spoke about, that, coming in the summer we're going to have electricity for our lights or our aircon. How are we going to charge these EV vehicles, mate, if we can't even keep cool?
Okay, so we have discussed this, and there's, of course, a fuel excise. When you buy petrol or diesel or whatever, you pay a very large fuel excise, which is supposed to go to the roads. Of course, EVs don't, but there's talk of, I think we spoke about this with James Ward, a registration system in place where when you pay for your registration, you log the kilometres you've done on your electric vehicle and you get a tax, which is what it is, or an excise levy on how many kilometres you've travelled in 12 months, and you pay that to try and make up for the fuel excise. So I think that's an idea. But it's got to be, because electric vehicles are very heavy. They still cause damage and wear and tear to the roads, and electric vehicles should be paying their fair share.
Yeah. Well, but also when it comes to like the electricity thing, when, peak summer, everyone's using their air conditionings, that itself puts a huge load onto the grid. And it is sad because there was kind of some research that was released in March that said that people experiencing financial and social disadvantage are skipping meals to pay their energy bills, as 9 in 10 struggle to keep their homes cool in summer. It definitely raises some questions about equality. Who has access to energy? Are EVs driving prices up because it's putting more load on the grid? I don't know. I'm not an energy expert. Maybe we can talk to somebody about that. But I thought something that I would mention, and it's not actually in Australia yet, but more and more electric vehicles, they are utilizing this thing called bi-directional charging. Essentially what that means is that your EV turns into like a battery for your home. So you can charge your car with the energy in your home. You can also then use the energy in your car to charge your house. So you can plug your house into the car essentially, and then use your aircon from the car if you've got leftover charge in your car. It's not available yet. Vehicle to grid is something that is starting to be, it's used in other countries as well. I'm not actually sure why we haven't regulated it in Australia yet, because that is a way to prevent blackouts and things like that. So it always seems that Australia's a little bit behind the ball, as always.
Yeah, it's funny we should be talking about electric vehicles and renewables, because I think that Chris Bowen and the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, are in for a world of pain when it comes to getting all the states and territories on board with net zero. And I'll tell you why, Kelsey. The Queensland Energy Minister is a bloke called David Jansky. He has said, hey, listen, coal-fired power is going to be around for a long, long time because renewables aren't ready yet. Jansky, who is set to release Queensland's revised energy plan, and that'll be in 2 weeks, said that the Queensland Crucifili government's envisaged coal power would be needed in the states for decades, well beyond the previous Labor government's deadline. Now, Anastasia Palaszczuk wanted net zero and no coal in Queensland by 2035. She made this promise back in 2022. The reality is, until renewables become cheap, reliable and safe, we should stop demonising coal and put money into developing batteries and renewables. But until they're ready, it is a ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous idea to be transfixed on this stupid net zero idea until renewables are ready. And I'm telling you this now, it's not just Queensland. It's not just Queensland that's going to buck the system. And WA is nearly self-sufficient. I mean, how many times do you see in summer complete states going into blackout because they can't cope with the load? And they borrow one load from another load and then borrow another load from another load. And that's now. Imagine if the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine and the batteries blow up, what happens then when you've closed down every coal mine and every coal station? We are all going to be in darkness. So I'm just telling you, Kelsey, that Chris Bowen and the Prime Minister and their ridiculous net zero deadline is fanciful, it's stupid, it's blinkered, and they need to rethink it. We'll move on.
Yeah.
But anyway, coming up a little bit later, I'm going to talk to Scotty Phillips about this childcare centre in Queensland, in Brisbane, that is going broke. And so as a fundraising method, Kelsey, they decided to charge parents $2,200 for their kids' paintings. This is childcare. This is young kids. And they hijacked them. And they said you can only have your kids' paintings back if you pay $2,000. That has been overturned now. The minister has got involved. That childcare centre is now closed down. They're going broke. But unbelievable story.
on this topic, I actually had somebody send in a TikTok video. It's from the channel Miss Che, but I'm not sure if you know this, but there is a state parliamentary inquiry into the childcare sector at the moment, and some very interesting things are coming out of it. And I just wanted to play you a little bit of, it's the CEO of Little Zach's Academy.
Richard Bell.
And it's a very good illustration of how money moves around the industry, but funnily enough, not into the pockets of the workers. So let's have a little listen.
Now, I'm not sure if this is correct, but I thought I read somewhere that you also had a labour hire company, or that there was some association with some sort of workforce provider. Is that correct?
We had some pretty challenging times in 2020 through COVID with staffing. Carlos Aki and I started a labour hire business to be able to assist with some of those staffing requirements.
Yeah, okay. So is that a related entity, or is that sitting outside?
That's sitting completely outside.
Okay, so the Zaki family, though, has an ownership interest in Little Zach's Academy.
Yes.
And they also then have properties that they own that are leased by Little Zach's Academy.
How can the public have confidence that there isn't in effect a bait and switch going on, where you're crying poor and saying we need a subsidy, we can't retain people, we need a subsidy, we can't provide a service here?
How much is your sort of overall remuneration package?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So my salary is $550,000, including super.
550,000. Jesus.
Just a reminder that some childcare workers get paid $40,000.
I know.
Also, it's crazy that this is a thing when these are also companies or businesses that get a lot of subsidies from government, and there are so many families out there struggling to pay for childcare. Well, it's just really sad, and it reminds me of the chat we had with Annalise a little while back, and the struggles that they go through as workers and barely get paid enough to live. And I don't know, you got this bloke over here that's bringing in over $500,000. It's crazy.
I know. It is unbelievable. Kelsey, guess what the Prime Minister's salary is, who runs the country? Have a guess. Just have a guess.
$750,000.
$586,950 to be precise.
It's crazy that this guy is getting paid essentially the same amount as the Prime Minister. Both of them are crazy.
And he's crying poor. Great story. Thank you for that. I want to hear from anyone who works in childcare. What do you get paid? What hours do you do? What are your responsibilities? I'm going to talk to Scotty Phillips about childcare as well, because a lot of Australians, young Australians your age, tell me, I say, are you thinking of having kids? No. Why? Cost of living. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know where I'm going to rent. I don't think I'm ever going to be own a place in Sydney. And until I have some security, I'm not going to bring a child into the world because it's so expensive. And one of the biggest expenses, Kelsey, is childcare.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. Hey, okay, we've got a voicemail from Kim. Let's have a listen.
Yeah, g'day, Luke and Kelsey and everyone else. It's Kim Bell here. I heard on the Man Cave episode last Friday about Adam talking about a bass that was signed by Paul McCartney. Little thing about me, I am a massive Beatles fan, so that got my ears absolutely ringing. Amazing stuff. I actually was lucky enough to see Paul McCartney in Adelaide back in 2023 when he came to the Adelaide Entertainment Centre, and I won a soundcheck competition to see him a day before the concert, up close and personal, and actually got to speak to him. So that was very good. And I saw him back in 2017 in Melbourne live, and that was my first time seeing him. So yeah, love it when you guys talk Beatles. It's amazing. So, yeah, hoping to hear some more Beatles stuff. And keep up the great work, guys. Loving all the eps. And I've updated the Man Cave song for you guys. So, bada bing, bada boom. Check it out.
Grow your hair for peace.
I don't understand that reference.
The lovable lads from... No, I'm not going to do it. I can't do accents.
You are really bad at them.
I know. I shouldn't attempt them. Can you hear that chainsaw? There they are. Kelsey, coming up, the most amazing woman you'll ever hear, the daughter of the late Gordon Piper, known as the Ketamine Queen of Australia, Kerrin Hofstrand. Kerrin, welcome to the Bonafide podcast. We've spoken on the phone a few times, but here we are actually hitting the record button. And I want to talk about your amazing life. And I just want to say it was the Gary Jubelin podcast that brought me to your attention because I am a big consumer of what he does. And the thing that impressed me the most is that of all the things you've done in your life, the mistakes and all, you take full responsibility. You don't defer responsibility. No. You admit it all, and you don't tell bullshit. And,
that's right.
And I love that. I mentioned in my introduction, your dad's very, very famous, which probably...
Well, I would say famous. I wouldn't say very, very famous. If he was very, very famous, he might be Robert Redford. But no, he's famous.
To me, he's famous because I was a massive consumer of a country practice. Kelsey wouldn't know what we're talking about. But and we'll get to this later in our chat about the accusations made towards your father that were unfounded, found that there was no case. And I think it's just terrible how when the accusations came out, it was front page news. And then when, of course, it was found out that there was no case to answer, it was like a tiny little paragraph.
Page 12.
Page 12 of the newspaper, which I think is a big case of injustice. But let's talk about you.
Yep.
How does a 70-something woman...
71 in November, yeah.
I've looked at some of the early photos of you, and I get it when I see the early photos, but you were out there. There was nothing you didn't have a crack at. There was nothing you didn't do. Nothing shocked you.
No, because you only live life once, and I can think of nothing, probably because of Dad, probably because Dad always had a crack at something. You know, and Mum was the stable one. Dad was the one who always would have a go at something. And I think I learned it from Dad that life's too short to think about what you're doing until you've done it. But, you know, it's like I used to tell the girls when I worked in the brothels, girls who had never done it before, and this was only massage with hand relief. This wasn't full service. They're a bit harder, in inverted commas, a bit harder. But the girls in massage are usually university students just wanting to put themselves through college, la, la, la. So I would always say to them, look, just give it a go. Just jump off the precipice. You're either going to land or you're going to fall. So one of the two, I'm not going to make you stay, you know. So it's like life. If you don't try, you don't know whether that be good or bad. Like when Ed sent the first thing over from California, if I hadn't said yes to that, I wouldn't know whether he was lying or not. So, you know what I mean? Like, you just got to do it. There's been things in my life, obviously, I've said no to, like I've said no to heroin. I've said no to a lot of things in the sex industry, but most things I'll have a go at.
I don't know where to start. You've worked in restaurants, you've worked in bars, you've just mentioned you've worked in massage parlours. Yep. I'm not really aware of the bondage and discipline. Yeah. You've worked in a bondage and discipline parlours where men of all backgrounds, politicians, solicitors, barristers, lawyers, senior counsel, would come to get, I guess, some sort of relief. And
it's not that. It's not that they can't ask for it. They just know where to go. Because the thing with bondage and discipline, it's the graduate school of sex because there is no sex. That's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And the thing with the kind of clients that you have is they're usually thinkers. They're usually lawyers, doctors, cops, whatever, even like academics, whatever. You get your day-to-day kind of guys as well. But normally they're people with thinking jobs and all they want to do for 1 hour is not think. And so you as a mistress do the thinking for them. So move over here, move over there, bend over, don't bend over, stand up, don't stand up. You know what I mean?
Let's get to, we're jumping ahead because I want to go back to talk about how it led to all of that. But you did time in prison for for dealing drugs. You were part of an importation. Well, the drugs were sent from America to you to post offices in the eastern suburbs.
That's right.
But let's go even further. Let's go even further back, because you were working at restaurants. You were working in bars. Everyone in Oxford Street knew you.
Yeah.
You and I had a great conversation on the phone the other day about the old King's Cross, the cross that I remember, and you remember it even better. I miss that cross in a funny way, especially the bourbon and beefsteak and the Texas Tavern and all that excitement. But how did you get involved in that scene and the Mardi Gras scene and the partying scene, which led to drugs? And I know that you talk about ecstasy, and back in your day, it was quite pure.
Yep.
Now, you say you wouldn't touch it because you don't know what's in it. How did this young girl with a famous tell me from the start?
Okay, so how all that happened was I came back from Hawaii with a coke habit. My boyfriend of the time, I was separated from my husband, and so my boyfriend, who became my second husband, literally pushed me on the plane and said, just go back to your grandmother and I'll be over. You know what I mean?
Now, you were living with your grandmother. Where, that was in Sydney?
I was living with my grandmother when I came home from Hawaii for about, 3 months, 4 months. And she lives in Bankstown. But anyway, she had no clue what was going on, obviously. My aunts had a bit of an idea because they weren't so stupid. But anyway, I moved into the city. I moved into Stanley and Yurong Street. And when I moved in here, because I'd been out of Australia for nearly 20 years, since I'd been back for that 3 months, I kind of heard about Oxford Street. I was working in restaurants around Oxford Street. Like I was working at the first restaurant I worked at was the Clock Hotel. They used to have the steakhouse downstairs. So that was the first restaurant I worked in. Then I worked at...
where was that? The Clock Hotel?
The Clock Hotel is on Crown Street.
Right.
And they had this really good steakhouse downstairs where they had the steak room, the fridge out the back. But it was very well known in those days for guys with the long lunches, when long lunches were still tax deductible. So that's what it was known for.
Before that bloody fringe benefits tax, yes.
Yeah. And then I worked at Cables at the Regent. Anyway, I worked always in the city or around, so I'd heard about Oxford Street. So the first bar I ever went into in Oxford Street was the Albury. And I met a guy there named Gary, who's still my friend today. I consider him one of my two best friends. My other one passed last year. And I met Gary and I learnt about this whole scene that I knew nothing about. I knew about the gay scene in Hawaii because my boyfriend / lover / whoever you want to call Chris, he was bisexual. And so we were always in the gay scene as well. And with Mark, my first husband, we always went to Hula's, which was a gay bar because it was the best bar there. So I was always kind of in the gay scene. So anyway, I met Gary. He introduced me to a lot of people. And then I found out about Mardi Gras and sleazeball. And it was just through talking to people because I had no clue because I hadn't been here. It was just word of mouth. And it was that time of the year that I think sleazeball must have been on. So I came back here in like the November and I didn't know about Mardi Gras. So that was the February. And it must have been around sleazeball time that I found out about all of this stuff,
What's sleazeball? For those who don't know, what is sleazeball?
Okay, sleazeball doesn't exist anymore. But sleazeball in the day when the Mardi Gras society was literally a society of gay and lesbians because there was, at that time, it was just LGB, lesbian, gay and bisexual. It wasn't LGBTQIA+, right? So, and to join the Mardi Gras community and be able to get a ticket to Mardi Gras, you had to go down to Boundary Street and you had to have two people who were already members sign you in. And I actually had to lie and go, yes, I'm bisexual. Yes, I'm this. Yes, I'm that. You know what I mean? To get even to be allowed to go to the party. The sleazeball part of it was always held in September, the last weekend in October. So they fucked up and they did it on the weekend that the NRL grand final or whatever grand final is on then. And it used to be held at the SCG. So one year I remember everybody walking out in the chaps and half naked and the NRL guys walking in the other way, and there was this huge massive fight. So they changed the date after that time.
Right.
Anyway, so that was a money-raising event, and it was very dirty, like very dirty.
Well, how dirty? What do you mean?
The boys would never have pants on. It would just be chaps. And the guys would be being led around many, many times with Prince Alberts, which is the piercings that go into the top of the penis, being led around by their boyfriends with chains and stuff like that.
Right.
It was dirty. And in the dome, which now is a PRP, which is where they do chest x-rays and ultrasounds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in the day, the dome was where all the boys went. It was dirty. Anyway, that was a money-making venture for Mardi Gras in the January or February. So sleazeball was always the party to go to. And that's where I met Ed. Was at sleazeball.
So you meet Ed.
Yeah.
And it's a very out there, exciting life. You're meeting people whose boundaries go beyond the norm, and it's exciting, and the adrenaline is rushed.
I just think it was, I don't even think it was an adrenaline rush. I just think it was finding my people.
Yep. Yeah.
You know?
I get that.
It's like everybody, you hang around with journalists. I'm sure they're your people.
No, most of them are pricks.
Yeah, well, see, most of the gays in the old days aren't like the gays now. You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of, I don't know, I find the gays now a bit too divisive, Anyway, that's my opinion, but, it's just the old gays who weren't old in those days, but the old gays were the better gays in my eyes.
There you are. So you're now in that community and you found your people and like-minded people with open minds, different boundaries to what society would normally find normal, whatever the word normal is, and it's exciting. So how did all that lead to ecstasy? Because you came back from America and you were into cocaine.
I came back from America and I wasn't into anything. Alcohol, because I came back to America to get away from the cocaine, and the cocaine here is crap. So I did not take, I hadn't, up until last year on my birthday, my 70th birthday, I hadn't done coke in over 30 years. And on my birthday last year, I did coke and I was asleep at 4 o'clock. So that's how bad the coke is here now. If you haven't done it in over 30 years and you're asleep by 4 o'clock, you know it's shit. Anyway, no, what happened was for sleazeball, so everybody in those days, ecstasy was the drug of choice. And there was a guy whose name was Ed who Gary introduced me to.
Right.
And he said, oh, Ed's got some ecstasies. And I was like, oh, good. Okay, so I'll go meet Ed and we'll go from there. And because there was a lot of guys or a lot of people I know who were working or couldn't see Ed, we'd all pull our money together. Kerrin, can you go and pick up 10 from Ed? Well, those 10 weren't from me. They were just for people, And they'd already paid me for them. It was nothing to do with me dealing. I was just the person who picked them up. Anyway, I did that with Ed about 5 or 6 times over a week to 10 days. Mm-hmm. So in other words, I got to know Ed. Mm-hmm. And then we come sleazeball the Saturday night. It was really like a 4-day weekend. You didn't get home until the Tuesday usually. Anyway, on the Sunday morning - afternoon, Ed and I were sitting because we'd met up afterwards. It wasn't like I was looking for Ed or I was, we just happened to be in this one place at this one time together. And we were sitting on the steps of what was a 7-Eleven on Oxford Street, down near Crown Street. And Ed said it was a little cafe at that time, I think. It wasn't a 7-Eleven. Now it's a 7-Eleven, but it was a little cafe then. Anyway, we're sitting on the step. And he said, Kerrin, if I sent you over 300 ecstasy a week or every couple of weeks, would you send me the money back? And I was high as a kite. And I went, yeah, sure, Ed, yeah, no problem. Because on ecstasy, it's an I love you tree drug, and that's what it was called. And you're just in a good mood, you know? And so I'm just thinking he's talking shit, you know, like, yeah, sure, you're going to send me over 300 ecstasy and I'm not sending you any money yet. So anyway, I told Chris was over now. Chris had come over from Hawaii. And so I went home and I told Chris, and I was like, you know, let's see what happens. And about a week later, Ed called me and he said, okay, so there's going to be a package arriving. I think the first one was in Bondi Beach.
Right.
There's a package arriving in Bondi Post Office, and all you've got to do is take a letter that says, whoever it was, say Julie Smith, to Julie Smith, and that you've got a letter saying that you can pick up the package. So that's what I did. And in those days, we didn't have photo ID. We just, I had a driver's license. It was a piece of paper. So it said, I, Julie Smith, give Kerrin Hofstrand the right to pick up my package. Basically, that's what the letter said, right? And then I signed Julie Smith's name. I showed them my driver's license, which said Kerrin Hofstrand on it. They basically looked at it and turned away. They didn't do half the things they do now. And I picked up the package and I took it home to Chris, and it was a 6-pack of macadamia nuts. And the macadamia nut thing goes like that's the sound. You know what I mean? When
it's like vacuum sealed, and it's
That's exactly right. And so we're going through. We've opened 2 or 3, and they're all macadamia nuts. And we get to like the 3rd or 4th, whichever it was. And I empty it out, and all of a sudden, down the bottom, there's just macadamia nuts on top, and down the bottom, there's 300 ecstasy. And Chris and I just looked at each other like, shit, oh my God, he's actually done this. And so then the panic started, because I was like, oh my God, what have I got myself in for here? And they literally sold, I think, within 4 days. And
how much a pill? I'm just trying to work out the money.
It's $50.
$50, 300 times $50.
Yeah, that's right. They sold really quickly. But then every time he did it a different way. Like one time it was, you know how you get the not fantails, what are they called? The fantasy chocolates, you know what I mean? Different kind of little chocolates in a box.
Yeah, like the family favourites.
Yeah, that's right. There'd be in a box of those.
Sorry, Cadbury, but anyway.
Yeah, well, whatever. And then another time it was in a box that was literally, and I don't know, I can't even remember what was in it, perfumes or something. That was literally, the cellophane was back on it perfectly. Ed was the best at putting things back together. Like,
how did he do that? How did he reseal something?
No clue. I have no clue. Because the next time I saw Ed in person was the time we got busted, because he was out here for the Queen's birthday weekend. Anyway, and what happened after that? So it was about once every 2 weeks I'd send him back $9,999 just to say underneath the $10,000 limit.
It had to be under 10 grand.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway. But every time I would get a package, I'd go up to the Albury Hotel, and Gary would usually be working because he always worked days, and he'd know to get me a double Stollies on the rocks with a splash of lime, and Bobby Lloyd would be playing, would be the DJ, and he would put on California Dreaming by Mamas and Papas.
Mamas and Papas, yeah.
And I'd take a half an eckie. If I wasn't in that bathroom vomiting, in 15 minutes, they were no good. And there was not one time I wasn't in there vomiting after 15 minutes, because that's what happens with very strong eckies. You do a vomit and then you go on your little journey of your ecstasy love fest.
How did the LSD thing come about?
LSD in my life or LSD in the bust?
We'll talk about the bust in your pink pajamas.
Oh, yeah, the pink flamingo pajamas.
I think we actually found a photo of you in your pink flamingo pajamas. We'll have a look at that. So there's ecstasy, there's LSD. How did LSD come into your life?
Ed's brother came over. Did he come over with Ed or did he come over separate? I can't remember. But he came over with all this LSD. Well, we weren't really kind of into LSD. It wasn't our thing. And Chris, I don't like LSD. I'd taken it as a kid and I wasn't really into it. So Chris did one and he said to me, and it was paper, it was pieces of little paper, with a dot on it.
Was it?
With no dot on it, but, they'd done a dot of sprinkle, And Chris took one and he goes, oh, no, they're really not that good. You might have to take 3 or 4 to even get anything out of it. Similar to the drugs you do today, that you've got to take 10 or 12 of them to get anything to work for you, So they were just literally sitting in my drawer of my vanity the whole time. Like I never sold them. I would give them away. I didn't owe him anything. He didn't want to take them back with him to the United States. So it was kind of like a gift of I don't even know. I think I had 400 hits or some massive amount of hits of LSD I had. I don't even remember because the cops ended up finding them in the back of the drawer in my vanity where I used to count my money and put eckies in different packages for all the bartenders. But yeah, so that's how the LSD came about. It wasn't part of it was part of the bust. I got busted for it, but it wasn't part of what I was selling.
We'll talk about the bust in a second. But if people Google your name, they'll go straight to a couple of stories about you. And there was one there that called you the Queen of Ketamine. Now, I'm really naive, so I'm going to need education here.
You sound like Gary.
Well, I am.
You sound like...
but Elon Musk and
I know.
It brought ketamine into the news. And we were actually, our family we were staying at this place in Bali. And one of the family members was talking about Elon Musk and going down what he called the K-hole.
K-hole, yeah.
And I said to him, what's it? Here I am. I've been working in radio 43 years. I deal with news stories, and I knew about Elon Musk and ketamine and Matthew Perry.
That's right.
But I didn't know what it was until I asked my GP. But what is this K-hole? And explain your relationship with ketamine and how all that came about.
Okay. So first of all, ketamine is and was, especially...
It's a horse tranquilizer or something, isn't it?
Up until, I would think since 2013, 2014, ketamine was a horse tranquilizer. That's all it was. It wasn't used for any medical issues.
Right.
Then psychiatrists, psychologists and doctors... I've just actually been watching The Pit on HBO Max, and they're using ketamine in the ER. So they must use it in obviously a prescribed dose to take the stress out of these people as they're going through this emergency room stuff. Because, because I used to work in ICU, I love those kind of shows, and I keep hearing, give him morphine, give him ketamine, da-da-da-da-da, right? So now it's got a medical use. The Elon Musk part of that story is he's abusing it. He's like, whenever you see Elon Musk, he's going down a K-hole.
What is the K-hole?
The K-hole is when you take too much of it and you literally feel like you're sliding down a hole. And so you'll see at dance parties in the 80s and not in the 90s and not in the 80s. I didn't bring it out here until 91. But you'll see people holding hands, 3 or 4 people holding hands while they're dancing, or they'll have a big scarf and they've got it in their mouths. 3 of them have got it in their mouths, so they're on the same scarf because they're going to go down the K-hole together. It's kind of like, it has kind of like, I'm going to say an acid, as in LSD, an acid effect, but in a different way. I didn't do a hell of a lot of it. I just sold it. But I always used to, when I did it, you only do a little bump. You only do what's underneath your fingernail. You don't do a line. It's not like Coke. It's just a little bump.
A bump, it's a powder.
It's a powder. That's how I got busted anyway, it's another story. You only do a little bump. And I always used to call it the snap, crackle and pop drug. I don't know why. I always felt like I was going up to the ceiling and I was looking down. Like people say, like, you know, when you die, you go up and then you're looking, or you
out of body experience.
Yeah, kind of like that. That's how I always felt on it. It was an extremely fun feeling, but I like to be in control, and you kind of get out of control. You know what I mean? That K-hole, you can't control anything that's going on, and you got to be really in a controlled environment to do it. And I just don't like that kind of feeling. So I never did it that much. But because I was the first person to import it into into Australia, I was never busted for it. If I would have been busted for it, I would have got a hell of a lot longer in jail. Really? But they didn't even know what it was.
How did you import it?
It through Bausch & Lomb bottles. Bausch & Lomb for your contact lenses. So It was in liquid form. And then I used to cook it down with Ed on the phone telling me how much I needed to cook and how long I needed to cook it for, etc. And I had some in the oven cooling down from the night before when they busted me. And they said to me, "What's this?" And I said, that's Special K. And they said, "What, like the cornflakes?" And I said, "No, like ketamine, like a horse tranquilizer." So that was it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about how you got busted, because then we can talk about your time in jail. The Big Flamingo, 90. There was an operation in New South Wales called Dobbing a Drug Dealer.
That's right.
And it went off. It absolutely went off. So one of your customers has narked you. What's happened? How did you get busted, and why do you think you got busted? If you were only selling to drug dealers who knew what they were drug users who knew what they were doing, you weren't selling it to kids, you weren't hanging around dance festivals, you were selling it to adult customers. Yeah. Why do you think you were dobbed in? How did that come about?
Because I was dobbed in by another dealer.
Competition.
Yes. Because I had at least one, if not two, bartenders in every place on Oxford Street working for me. Not working for me, but I would give them 10 ecstasy a night. They would sell the 10 ecstasy, and then I'd give them one. Like that was their payment, right? So they would collect over a 5-night period. They'd have 5 eckies. If they'd sold 50 for me, they'd have 5 eckies. You know, they were in seventh heaven, because in those days, first of all, they're working on Oxford Street, so they could do a quarter and still work. But in those days, every Friday and Saturday night, there was a dance party on. The raves, the Paradise Garage, Bacchanalia. There was a dance party every Friday and Saturday night. So everybody needed ecstasies every Friday and Saturday night. So you did the ecstasies, and then on the Tuesday you started saving for your next weekend, you know. That's just how it happened.
You're dobbed in by another drug dealer. Do you know who that was?
I do.
Are they still alive?
They are.
No,
I don't see him.
You're still filthy?
Look, going to jail saved my life. It really did. So filthy at the time, absolutely. When I found out, I didn't find out until I was about halfway through my sentence that it was him that dobbed me in.
Then how do you know? Did he blab? Did he tell people?
He told everybody on Oxford Street.
I'm going to dob her in.
Yeah. No, that he had dobbed me in.
Oh, he had dobbed Kerrin.
Yeah. He didn't tell anybody, because then I would have found out. If he would have told everybody before I got busted, I would have found out and got rid of everything. So, you know, there's no reason to dob me in. But after I got busted, then he went around and blabbed to everybody, and that's when it got back to me. And I was probably about halfway through my sentence by that time. I don't even think I'd been sentenced, because I wasn't sentenced for 13 months after I got in jail. But anyway, so yes, I was very dirty at the time. I had a death wish on him for many years, but in hindsight, and I even said this probably a year after I got out of jail, after I not settled down, but after I got over the shock of being in jail and being out, which are two shocks in themselves. I thought, if he hadn't dobbed me in, I'd still be out here and I'd still be doing the same thing. And where would my life be? Like, I don't know that, would I still be drinking a bottle of Stolies a day? Would I still be living on West Street? Would I still have money in my pocket, or would I be dead? You don't know. So he really saved my life in some ways.
But you were pretty well connected. Did you ever think about putting a hit out on him?
No, I wasn't connected to those kind of people.
Okay.
That's, people have a tendency to think that because you deal and because you are at a certain point in dealing, I was dealing to Oxford Street gays. These people aren't heavy people.
Yeah.
There was John
They're
Ibrahim.
party people.
That's right. John Ibrahim was up here. Up here being I live in Potts Point. John Ibrahim was up here. All that stuff was going on in the Cross. I was on Oxford Street. I lived in Potts Point, but we moved from Stanley and Eurong. No, I lie. I didn't live in Potts Point then. I moved from Stanley and Eurong to West Street. I got busted in West Street. After I got out of jail is when I moved to Potts Point, which was the end of 93 going into 94.
Okay, so you've been dobbed in and the police are watching you from across the road, because your bedroom was right near the window and there you are counting money and counting pills.
That's right.
So they're watching you. So take us to the day of the arrest and the pink pajamas.
Okay, so I was in the bathroom of upstairs, right? Just outside my bedroom was the bathroom, and it had, what do you call them? Doors that don't lock and they just fold, but they don't fold like this, they just fold in. Anyway, whatever. Louver doors kind of thing.
Louver doors, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm in the bathroom. Now, I live with 3 guys. 2 were partners and Chris. And I was in my pink flamingo pajamas. I was just getting up. I was cleaning my teeth. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I was cleaning my teeth and there was a knock on the bathroom door and they said, "Get out now." And I said, "Just a minute, guys, I'm just cleaning my teeth." And they said, "No, it's Sydney Police," whatever they said, you know what I mean. And I said, "Okay, I've still got to clean my teeth." And then one of them opened the door and I said, "See, I'm cleaning my teeth." So then we went downstairs. Then they showed me the warrant and I got the numbers wrong on the warrant, thinking that they had missed the date, but apparently it was written out the day before and it's good for 12 months or whatever. I don't know. Gary kind of explained that to me, but I have no clue. Anyway, I just missed the date. I was thinking, I've got away with it, but I hadn't. Of course I hadn't. And so 18 cops came through the skylight, through the front door, because there was people downstairs, as there always was in my house. There was people downstairs on the lounge, opened the front door, had to let them in because they had a warrant, came through the back door, which means they had to come through the next door neighbours. To get onto my skylight, they had to come through the other next door neighbours. So there was 18 cops in total. Ed was over for the weekend. It was the Queen's birthday weekend. It was the 8th of June, 1991. It was the Queen's birthday weekend. Ed was over for the parties. There's 4 parties on that weekend. And so they handcuffed him because they knew of him as well. I don't know how, couldn't tell you. Probably just by watching me. And they handcuffed him to the bottom of the stairs because it was a terrace house. But they let me walk around. They never handcuffed me, not once, until I went down to the cells, which is nearly 24 hours later. And they went through the house, we went through my bedroom, found everything in my bedroom. Then they didn't find 2 Bausch and Lomb bottles, which were in the pantry. They didn't find those, so they didn't know anything about those. And I couldn't get busted for it anyway, because ketamine wasn't illegal at that time. And then they asked me about the ketamine and I told them what that was. They busted me they found those LSD.
Didn't you actually have some ketamine cooling off in the oven?
Yeah, that's right. That's how they got me.
What's this in the oven? It's not a cake.
No, they said to me, what is this? And I said, it's Special K. And they said, what, like cornflakes? And I said, no, like ketamine, like horse tranquilizer. But anyway.
And was it illegal? Was ketamine illegal back then?
No.
So you weren't busted for. Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't busted for ketamine. I was the first person in Australia to be busted with ketamine. So this is why when people talk about me now because of that news.com thing, they see ketamine queen. But really, if you Google ketamine queen, you find the girl who pled guilty to Matthew Perry's death. And this is why ketamine has become such a source of conversation now, is because of how Matthew Perry died. You know?
And of course, Elon Musk, which we've already mentioned. So all these police are in your place. They've got a warrant, and you go and you think to yourself, "I'm done."
Yep.
There were two detectives that you actually quite liked.
Yep.
I know you weren't too fond of the screws at jail, but we'll get to that. So you've gone done. You've never lied. And as I said in the introduction, you've always taken responsibility. Were you shitting yourself? Did you actually think you would go to jail?
Yes, because about 10 days prior, Kevin, one of the guys I lived with, who sadly has passed now, I was standing with my bum against the fire. We had an open fire. And he said to me, "Kerrin, aren't you at all scared? Like, you know, because I was quite blasé about it. You know what I mean? I could never walk out of the house without $500 in my pocket, and I always had ecstasy in my pocket just in case I ran into somebody who wanted some. I was really quite blasé." And Kevin said to me, "Aren't you ever scared of getting busted?" I said, "If you deal drugs and you're not scared of getting busted, you're a fucking idiot, because the risk is there no matter if you're at the lowest level or at the highest level." And I was just somewhere in the middle. I was not at the highest level, probably the highest level with the Special K because I was the only person with it. But I mean, you know, in regards to dealing, I was only dealing on one street plus Flinders Street for the taxi club, and what's the hotel across the road from the taxi club? I can't remember the name of it. But that was all. That was my area. It wasn't like I was like nationwide. It was I was a street. I just happened to have quite a few people selling for me on that street. But 90s Oxford Street was the only place anybody went. Nobody went to, you know, you went to the Cross to go to the strip joints, but to party, you went to Oxford Street. Right. There was like lines up at every nightclub, and it was the best time, the absolute best time. Now Oxford Street is a shadow of itself. You know, it's nothing anymore.
So you get convicted.
Yep.
3 years?
3 years. I keep forgetting if it's 3 years, 2 months, or 3 years, 8 months. But I think it's 3 years, 8 months with 2.5 years on the bottom.
So you go, all right, this is it.
Yep.
I can't blame anyone else except me.
That's
and
right.
here I am in jail.
Yep.
A women's prison.
Yep.
And you've talked about how funding for men's prisons is completely different to funding for women's prisons.
There is no funding for women's prisons.
Tell me about what life was like in jail.
Well, life for me in jail was actually a lot easier than it was for a lot of people in one way, and it was a lot harder in another way. In one way, it was easy because my father was who he was at the time, and everybody that's in that jail basically is from the western suburbs. And where was a country practice the biggest? In the western suburbs.
Wandon Valley.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, as far as the girls were concerned, I was like, you know, a bit of a star. As far as the screws were concerned, I was a bit of a bitch because I had a brain in my head. I had a father who was quite famous. And so every time they pulled any shit on me, all I would ever say to them was, I get one phone call a week, and I can either call the Sun, which was a paper at the time, the Daily Mirror, Channel 7 or Channel 9. I don't even think Channel 10 was around then. I said, which do you want it to be? And then after 5 weeks of being in jail, I got a job as a trustee. Now, you don't get jobs as trustees unless you've been in there like at least 3 years, going on 5. And I got a job in reception. And so I had the best job in the jail.
That's a promotion. How did you get that level? Because of your dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a coveted position to have in jail, and you had access to uniforms. You had access to everything.
Yeah, 100%. I had and also I went down. So I was in the crap part where everybody goes when they first go in, which is called Conlon. It's a wing where a lot of the junkies who are just on warrants and they're in for 10 days or they're in for 6 months or whatever. It's a junkie. It's a junkie wing. But you also go there when you first go into jail. And so depending on your charges, you either stay in Conlon or you go to one of the other wings. But you don't go down to stage 2, which is where I ended up 5 weeks after I got in there because of Dad, because I had a job in reception. And so I was moved down to where lifers were. I was in a lifers wing 5 weeks after I got there. Which is fine by me because it was clean, it was fabulous, all the girls were great, because when you're in for many years, you keep that wing looking like a house. You know what I mean? Like it's as clean as it can get.
Because a lot of the women that you met in jail were drug addicts, or which is terribly sad. But I know with heroin, if you're a heroin addict, you get methadone.
Yes.
But what does the government provide for somebody who's on cocaine or alcohol addiction or another sort of addiction? What?
No, nothing. We got nothing. Methadone, the methadonians, as I call them, got methadone, and we got nothing. That was just how it is.
How many of the heroin addicts that you met in jail were heroin addicts and used prostitution to try and
I couldn't tell you that. I wouldn't know. I would probably, because the heroin addicts usually are in and out.
All right.
In those days, you'd walk around the cross where all the hookers were in those days. There's not so many up here now. Well, there is, but they work privately and they're a little bit more put together. But in those days, there was a lot of heroin addicts who were hookers. But in their bags that you would find with them on the street would be 7 pairs of underwear, 3 bras, and a good pair of runners, because you needed those to go to jail. If you went to jail with nothing, you had to get all the jail resources.
Yeah.
So these girls who knew they had warrants for prostitution or heroin, whatever, that weren't in jail but had warrants for their arrest because they hadn't gone to their hearings in court, then, as I was saying, they'd get up from 10 days up to every day in jail in those days, from memory, was worth $60. So therefore, if they had a warrant out for their arrest and it was a $600 charge, right, because they didn't turn up for 2 hearings of some description, then they'd be in jail for 10 days because they paid off the debt, right? They really didn't pay anything, but they paid off the debt by being in jail for 10 days, where they got methadone and they had a roof over their head and 3 meals a day.
And safer than out on the street.
Safer than out on the street, but didn't do anything for them because they'd be back 3 months later with exactly the same thing. Working in reception, how many times I saw the same girls come back every time. There's no resources in especially women's prisons for these women not to reoffend. The recidivism rate is like 70 to 80%. In those days, it was like 95% because everybody in those days was on heroin, and everybody in those days just went in, got straight, and went back out and did exactly the same thing again. Whereas the girls I was in with, the ones that I was down in Brady with in stage 2, there was a couple, I would think maybe 3 heroin addicts, but they had done major crimes like robbing banks or doing 20 break and enters. Like you can't get down there unless you're doing like 5 years, right? I got down there because of Dad, but you can't go down there unless you're doing like, I think it's either 3 or 5 years before you can get into stage 2. And so these people are all on bigger charges. I was in with 3 murderers. I was in with Roseanne Catt. There was a lot of people, that had big charges. That's the only way you get down there. And the other people just were on a rotating cycle of going out, coming in, going out, coming in.
Well, so there was absolutely no rehabilitation offered?
There was no rehabilitation offered that they wanted to take. If there was, there'd be, I think a psychologist came out about once every 3 weeks. They got their methadone every day. There was unless they said to the nurse, can you drop my dose so I can get off, you know what I mean? Because say, I don't know how the dosages work. I have no clue. But just say it's a mill, they're on a mill and they want to drop to 0.75, they have to verbally be the ones to say that. The nurse is not there to say to them, don't you think it's time you went down on your dose? And I know girls who were there for 8 years. I know one girl in particular who's passed now. And the only reason I know she's passed is because one of her family contacted me through TikTok. Anyway, she'd been in there 8 years. She got 20 years. She got life plus 20 years. So she was in there 8 years. She wouldn't settle. She just couldn't settle. And so she was not a heroin addict, but at 8 years she started doing heroin. And they said to her, but Kathy, you weren't doing heroin before. And she goes, I'm doing it now because I've been doing it since I've been in here. She hadn't been doing it since she'd been in here. She just couldn't stand being there anymore. And methadone calmed her down. So it's just a nightmare. I mean, it's not like a male jail. Male jails, they've got bloody social workers walking around. Try and find that in a female jail. No.
You mentioned Roseanne Catt. We should try. She goes by her name, Beckett, now. Spending all that time in jail falsely. Yeah. It's another story, but wow. So you do your time, you're released, and you then this is where your story also is fascinating. You go and work in, do I call it a massage parlour?
No, I didn't start in massage parlours. I started in bondage and discipline parlours.
Okay, you started. I thought you moved into bondage. So no. So you're released and you get involved in bondage and discipline.
Because I was working in a full service part of a bondage and discipline parlour.
Yeah.
And I learned how to do bondage and discipline whilst I was there.
Explain what bondage and discipline is for the uninitiated.
It's when somebody gets tied up and spanked, or when somebody gets dressed up in female clothing, or when people get temporary piercings, or they have, deprivation, like you're in these latex things that all the air's taken out and you've just got a little thing that you can blow out of so you can still breathe. I mean, it's all levels of a different kind of sex where there is no sex. But most people go in to get spanked, to have temporary piercings done, or as we call it, do a slap and tickle, which is what most people who are experimental in their life at home with their partner will do anyway. You know what I mean? A bit of a spank on the bum, a little bit of play,
To get involved in BDSM.
Yeah, just call it bondage and discipline.
Bondage and discipline. Yeah. What sort of training's involved so that you know when not to?
A lot. So you can't just walk into a dungeon with a guy and go, okay, I'm going to spank you now, because you need to know how to spank without leaving marks. And then everybody has levels of which they're uncomfortable or comfortable with. So obviously people don't want to go home with marks on their bum, so you've got to know whether to put a towel over them, all this kind of stuff. It's about 6 months worth of apprentice work with other mistresses where you go in to a dungeon with another mistress, and the mistress is teaching you. The guy knows you're there, obviously, and you get paid like $100 to be there, so that it's a fantasy for him, but also you're learning. So there's a lot of training. There's a lot of training. There's books to read. I mean, there's textbooks. Seriously.
Really?
Yeah.
Textbooks on how to do bondage and
BDSM 101, it's called.
Really?
Yeah.
You watch people Google now.
BDSM 101. It was written by a husband and wife many years ago. I think the husband has passed or the wife has passed, one of the two. But in the 90s, that was the book you got.
When I was a young panel operator at 2GB back in the 70s, one of the guests coming in for an interview was, and you know this, Gretel Pinniger. She, Madame Lash.
Oh, Madame Lash, yeah, Gretel. Oh, yeah.
And she lived at Avalon.
She still does.
Yeah, did she? She still lives anyway.
She's still living. She just sold not long ago. She sold the church that she owned, which wasn't a church anymore, obviously, like a town hall kind of thing, building. Next door but one to a massage parlour I used to manage down on Cleveland Street. So she used to own this building, and she used to have Madame Lash parties there.
Madame Lash, look at her. I actually met her, not professionally, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I met her when I was a young, impressionable 17-year-old, and I couldn't believe it was the famous Madame Lash.
Yeah,
so
been around a long time.
Did you enjoy your time with the bondage?
I absolutely loved bondage.
You loved it. Why did you love it?
Just because, again, as a thinker, I like doing things for thinkers, and you're just giving people relief. You're just like, it's not like having sex with somebody where it's a wham bam, thank you ma'am, and that's fine. Everybody, like, more power to you. It's like, I believe in massage parlors and brothels 100,000%. It saves more marriages than it breaks up. And bondage and discipline is another thing where it saves marriages, because these people come in and do stuff that their wives would not imagine doing with them, you know. And as a mistress, there's only 2 mistresses in Sydney from the 90s that I know, the 90s and 2000s, that I know that never worked as a submissive as well. As a mistress, you usually work as a submissive as well, because if you don't know what they're going through, how can you do what you're doing? And also there's more money in submissive work. So I was a submissive as well, and I had this one client who I used to see privately as a submissive, and his wife sent him to me. And his wife used to contact me, and it was just when mobile phones were coming in, and she used to text me and go, Kerrin, he's got to come down and see you. It's got to that point, you know. So it would be once a month, once every 6 weeks, whatever. And we became really good friends. Like, the 3 of us became very good friends, because I was satisfying something that she couldn't do. And then I heard from him after I finished in 2005. I stopped working totally, and I heard from him about 2 or 3 months after I stopped working, and his wife was convinced that she could do what I had been doing. So their marriage was very good, you know what I mean? So I was very happy for them in the end, you know.
It's just amazing. And what about the wife saying, it's got to that point,
and
you can do for my husband, who I love, something that I can't, and the 3 of you became friends. It's just an incredible story. Before I move on to your dad, I've got to ask you this. Do you regret selling drugs at all? Besides the jail, obviously.
No, well, I don't even really regret the jail. I hated jail, but only because of the screws, you know. I didn't hate the girls or anything. Do I regret selling drugs? No, not really. Because the drugs I was selling, I wasn't, as I said to the judge when I did my little statement that you do when you're getting sentenced, when I said to Judge Moore, I wasn't selling heroin at the kindergarten gate. You know, I was selling ecstasy to everybody was over the age of 18 that I knew of anyway, and it was ecstasy. It was ecstasy. And I was giving away LSD, and yes, they did Special K, thanks to Kerrin, but no, and it's funny, I look at the things online from the YouTube thing that I've done, and they're like, oh God, you know, she's such a galah, or it's so boring. And it's like, love, you didn't live in the 90s. You don't get what it was like in the 90s. You're sitting there with your bottle of wine getting pissed when we didn't drink that much. We did. If you went into Mardi Gras or Sleazeball or any of the dance parties, into the Horton Pavilion, the first thing that you saw when you walked in the door was the Chuppa Chup and water stand, because everybody had an ecstasy in their mouth, dropped it with the water, and then put the Chuppa Chup in their mouth to suck on for the whole time that they were high on the ecstasy. That's how much alcohol we did in the 90s. Alcohol was not a big drama in the 90s. Ecstasy was the drug that kept alcohol out of our systems. We did our alcohol, absolutely, but it wasn't about going out and getting sloppy drunk, you know? So no, I don't have any misgivings of dealing drugs, because I wasn't dealing bad drugs, you know?
You said at the beginning of our chat you wouldn't touch ecstasy today. Why is that?
I wouldn't touch any drug today.
Why is that?
Because you don't know what's in them. From working in the massage parlours, and the girls that I work with were all like, you know, in their 20s to 40s, and they were still going out of a weekend, obviously, and them knowing my history, they'd come in and go, oh, you know, or they'd take the day off, you know what I mean? Like, they know how I felt about them taking a day off. But I was like, what, you went out on the weekend? And then a couple of them I was really good friends with, I'd go, how many did you take? And they'd go, 8. 8? How do you take 8? Because they're such shit now. When I was selling them, one would last you 2 days, because you'd take a half and then you'd be flying high. You'd come down for a while. You don't want to go straight back up. You come down after 6 or 8 hours and feeling fine, go home, have a bath, freshen up, come back out to Oxford Street and drop the other half for another day. Like, they were pure. They weren't stamped on like the shit now. People die of what's going around now. People didn't die in my day.
Which brings me to a question. Recently, and I know you and I have spoken about this on the phone, the Queensland government has decided to not participate in pill testing at dance festivals, and it's been a topic of derision for quite some time. Some people, more conservative people, will say, oh no, it's legalising the taking of drugs, and it's saying to the kids or whoever's taking it, look, have the drug, and you can be rest assured that at least with the scientific knowledge that we have so far, there's nothing in it. But they're always inventing new things to put in things that aren't detected. You see, this is the problem. Well, how do you feel about drug testing, pill testing at these dance festivals?
It should 100% be there, because what's going into the drugs now is shit, and you don't know what you're taking. So why don't you have a pill tester standing there, instead of having 2 dog squads standing there busting somebody and going, okay, get rid of all your drugs, but we're not going to bust you. We're just going to, you know, take the drugs and let you go. He or she is going to go somewhere else and buy more drugs from somebody they probably don't know and OD on them. How many ODs do we hear about? I mean, admittedly, there's not as many dance parties anymore as there used to be, but there's ODs every friggin' time there's a dance party. You know, or what they call festivals now. There's 8 ODs, 9 ODs. It's like it never happened before, because the pills were always pure and they knew how much to take. Kids today don't know how much to take. They don't know what they're taking, and they kind of have this I don't care attitude. It's not going to happen to me. Well, guess what? The person in the coffin with the parents crying over them probably thought the same thing.
I haven't spoken to Tony Wood for many years, but I did years ago, whose daughter Anna died back in 1995 after consuming, he says, one ecstasy tablet. Now, this was in 95, so maybe this is the era where you're telling me things were cleaner. He says that she had one pill and her brain fried and she died. It's tragic. And I remember the book and I remember talking to Tony. That's one pill. So what affects one person one way can affect another person another way. Or the theory is that Anna took more than one that night. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Well, so 95 was after my very pure tablets were gone. Right? Because I was gone in jail in 91. So 95, I don't know. I remember it very, very well because it was ecstasy. Well, they say it was.
Well, it was acute water intoxication secondary to ingestion of MDMA.
Well, there you go.
So she drowned herself.
She drank too much water.
Yeah.
Because whatever was in the tablet, or she's taken more than one. There's no way. I mean, I don't know. See, I don't know what was in the tablet. See, nobody knows what was in the tablet. But this is, again, Anna Wood could have been saved in those days if there was pill testing. Anna Wood could have been saved if she would have only done a half. You know, these kids don't know what they're doing. They don't know. So this is why, because I never dealt to 15 and 16-year-olds, you know?
Yeah.
People that I was around were 18 and over.
Yes.
They were adults. They knew what they were doing. And if I said to them, the only thing they didn't listen to me on was the Special K, but if I said to them, they're strong, only do a half, they either took my advice or they didn't. What happens today is there's somebody out in the western suburbs making up crap, selling it as ecstasy, and God only knows what's in it, probably in these days, fentanyl, and they're dying. People are dying. And you just don't get it. Like these days I tell people to stick to alcohol, you know? Like I'd rather see somebody vomit but still be alive. I wouldn't suggest to anybody to do drugs these days, not even Coke, because Coke has always been shit in Australia.
It's just the most amazing story. If you've just dropped in on us, it is the incredible story of the life of a woman who's done just about everything, dealt with drugs, worked in massage parlours, a bondage, a BDS, was it bondage and
discipline? Just say bondage and discipline.
A bondage and discipline mistress. Kerrin Hofstrand, who, and we mentioned this at the very beginning, you have a famous father, or had a famous father, Gordon Piper, who was Bob Hatfield in A Country Practice. And back in 1999, he was charged with the sexual molestation of an 11-year-old girl who the police said attended his house at Penrith to help him unpack boxes.
Yep.
He maintained his innocence. He was subsequently acquitted of all charges. Now, I remember when this made the headlines, we were all, what, Bob Hatfield, what? And I remember, please, if I've got the timeline wrong, you'll correct me, but I also remember at the time he'd been diagnosed with diabetes.
Yep.
And at one point had his leg amputated because of his diabetes.
Yeah.
Both
legs.
And of course, we all watched the program and loved the program. We all loved Bob Hatfield. So you've got this famous dad who's made the headlines for the wrong reasons. It must have devastated you. How did you cope with that, and how did he cope with it? Take us through that terrible journey.
Well, the thing was, I was living on Macleay Street in Potts Point, and my grandmother, I think, called me. It was either my grandmother, wasn't my brother, that's for sure.
It wasn't Bob's mum. It was
no. My mother's mother. My grandmother on my father's side, I didn't speak to since I was 16. Anyway, that's another story. But Nana called me and said, "Have you heard the news?" I went, "No." This is like quite early in the morning. I said, "No, I've just gotten up. What's going on?" And she goes, "Your father's been charged with charges against children." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I know." She said, she used to call me Kez. She goes, "Kez, I don't believe it." Now, this is a woman who hated my father.
Really?
My grandmother on my mother's side.
So she wasn't about to defend him because she loved him. She was
defending him because she knew he was not guilty. And she said, your father wouldn't hurt a child. If my life depended on it, I know he wouldn't hurt a child. And she said, he was always good to you and Kim. Kim's my brother. And she said, there's no way in the world. And I said, well, how do we know that he wouldn't hurt somebody else, right? So I'm the negative Nelly. I end up calling Penrith Police Station because it was in Penrith. I end up calling Penrith Police Station and I said, I'm Gordon Piper's daughter. Can you tell me what the charges are, etc.? And they said, well, we can only give you so much information. I said, I'm his daughter. Then just tell me how old the children were that are involved. And he said 11 and 14. I went, right. Okay, thanks very much. Then it's on the newspaper, headlines, it's on the news, blah, blah, blah. I call my father. I waited a day because I was in a little bit of shock. I waited a day and I said, okay, Dad. And he goes, okay, so you want to know what happened? And I said, yeah, well, it'd be nice so that when they contact me, I can tell them what's going on because I know they'll contact me. Anyway, he goes, it's not true. My father and I at this time were a bit estranged, to say the least. And so he said to me, no, it's not true. It's this woman, because he had this acting studio out in Penrith called Fast Focus. And he said, it's this woman whose kids I teach out in Penrith, and she's got the hots for me. And my father used to put his arm around everybody. He just did that. He was 6'4" and just put his arm around people. There was nothing, naughty about it at all. And the kids knew that. And the mother took it as a sign of sexual advancement on his behalf to her. Anyway, my father had been diagnosed. How I also know there was nothing sexual about his interaction with the 11 and 14-year-old because he'd been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and he was impotent. So there was no sexual feeling whatsoever. And by the time it got to court, he had one leg amputated. By the time the end of his life, he'd had both legs amputated. But by the time he got to court, he'd had the one leg amputated. They had then by that time questioned the children, and the children had said mum had coached them, and it was thrown out of court.
But the arrest and the charges, huge headlines.
Huge headlines for about a week.
The fact that he was found to have no charges to face and acquitted. The article in the Daily Telegraph was this tiny little thing on page 12. How did that make you and him feel?
It made me look. The whole thing affected my brother more than it affected me because my brother was still quite close to my father. My father was just trying to get by at that time. He knew he wasn't guilty, so he didn't care. And his life was battling diabetes, having a roof over his head. Like his life had totally changed from when he was Gordon Piper on a country practice. The diabetes really, well, that's what you get when you don't look after yourself when you got diabetes. And me as a nurse would always tell him that, but he never listened to me, so it didn't matter anyway. But it affected him because it ruined his reputation. And I actually went in after Dad had passed. I actually went into, I don't know if he'd passed or not. He passed in 2004. Maybe before he passed. I went onto his Wikipedia page and changed it to be like he'd been charged with these and he was found not guilty. You know, there was no whatever charges to be heard. But, it didn't really affect me that much after it calmed down. It pissed me off when it was happening because I knew he wasn't guilty. If my grandmother said he wasn't guilty, I believed her, you know.
This is my question. If it was found to be that the kids admitted they'd been coached by this mother, why wasn't she charged?
Exactly. I think that what happened was either Dad didn't want to go any further with it or the cops just wanted to let it go. I have no clue. We didn't talk about it after that page 12 article. I don't know the ins and outs of what happened. All I know is that she coached the kids, and online in different times of my life, I've had people come on and go, no, it didn't happen like that. This is the way it happened. I know that person. And it's like, then you tell me your story. And they never come back with their side of the story. So it's like, whatever. I'll believe my father in the courts before I'll believe anybody, you know?
It's an amazing story, Kerrin. And I know you've got to go and we've got to go. I'd love to talk to you again. Where to from here? 71, I understand you enjoy cooking and you have a pet dog.
No, I don't know why they said.
I don't want to.
I do have a pet dog. I do have a pet dog.
I was going to say, I don't know what you're cooking.
No, I'm not cooking anything. I hate cooking. I don't know why it said I enjoy cooking. I enjoy French cuisine.
You like being cooked for.
That's
what they
right. I don't enjoy cooking at all. If my microwave broke, I'm in big trouble. You know, if there wasn't a salad bar next door to me, I would be in really big trouble. No.
Your story's got to be a mini-series or a movie or something. Are you working on it?
I'm hoping that Netflix or Stan contact me. That's what I'm hoping.
All right, you know me. I am definitely not one for rabbit food, but these new Power Bee Bite Bars from Nature Bee, they are the real deal. Crunchy chocolate caramel, peanut, honey, choc chip, proper flavours, real flavours. And here's the kicker. Each one's got 5 grams of protein plus Nature Bee's famous power pollen to give you that natural lift. And they're just $14.95 a box. Perfect when you're on the go, between meals or need a pick-me-up on the road. It's a snack that actually fuels you, not just fills you. I chuck one in with my power pollen capsules in the morning and I'm sorted for the day. You can grab a 6-month supply of Power Pollen for just $160 and they'll throw in an extra month and 2 bars of their famous pollen and honey soap for free. So if you want to level up your wellness routine, grab a box of Power Bee Bite Bars with your next order of Power Pollen. The links are in the description right now.
Because I would love a mini-series. I don't so much want a movie, but I reckon that there's a mini-series in it.
Oh, for sure. Who would play you? Who's your pick?
People ask me this. I don't know, because it'd have to be somebody in their 30-somethings. And I don't know actresses in their 30-somethings these days. They wouldn't be playing me now because my life now is boring. Well, not boring. I can't say it's really boring. But I've still got my fingers in a few pies. But it's not as exciting as it was then, but I don't know. I have no clue because I don't know who the actresses in Australia are that would be 30-somethings, you know.
Well, we can ask our listeners, Luke Boner, radioguy@gmail.com. What lessons do you take away from this incredible life at 71? What advice would you pass on now to 19-year-old Kerrin?
To 19-year-old Kerrin, I would say don't leave Hawaii and straighten your life up over there. But I would say don't leave Hawaii and stay nursing or stay on the ship. But really and truly, everything I've done in life is nothing that I can honestly say I regret. The thing I regret the most is leaving Hawaii. Not because of anything that happened here, but just because I loved Hawaii so much and I loved living there that I'd still like to be living there. Nothing to do with Coke. I mean, I would have gotten over that one, you know what I mean, as life went on. And not because I got busted when I came back here, but just because I loved Hawaii. So I probably would have told the person that was coming back on the plane, don't get on the plane. But 19-year-old Kerrin, I probably would have said just live life as you are going to. There's nothing, I don't really kind of have any regrets. I'm still good friends with both of my husbands. I mean, you know, they're both Americans. One lives here, one lives in Hawaii. there's nothing I really regret. If you regret things in life, then go back and try and change it a bit. You know what I mean? I mean, I'd like to be thinner. I don't know. I don't know. There's really nothing.
No regrets at all?
No, other than leaving Hawaii, no.
Yeah.
No.
Wow. You know, it's almost like the Paul Anka song, My Way, made famous by Sinatra. It was written for you.
Well, yeah, because it's true. I have 2 tattoos on my arms, one there and one there.
What do they say? Give a look. Hold it up for me.
You can't read it because it's in French. It says, Je ne regrette rien, which means I regret nothing, and profiter de la vie, which means seize the day. So that's...
Or carpe diem in Latin.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Wow. Can we talk again? I'd love to hear more of, because there's more to talk about. I'd love to hear about your time on the cruise ship.
Yep, no problem.
Because everyone was doing drugs.
Yeah, everybody was doing drugs.
And your time in the sex industry is fascinating. It's just, for a lot of our listeners, it's another world. And you've given us a great peek into it. You've been really generous, and it's been great to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luke. It's been lovely being here.
Well, I know we discussed this with the Deputy Leader of the Nationals, Kevin Hogan, last podcast, but I wanted to talk to a tech expert about exactly what happened with Optus last Thursday. We now know that 4 people have died because of an outage where people were unable to ring 000. And something else happened on the 8th of November back in 2023, and I remember it vividly because there was another outage, and Trevor Long from EFTM, Everything for the Man, rang me live on air while I was doing a national radio program and said, listen, Luke, something's up with Optus. We found out at 5:05 a.m. what had happened, but the CEO then didn't do anything for over 24 hours later. But that's where the similarities kind of stop, because what happened last Thursday is a lot different. And there is well and truly a blowtorch on Stephen Roux, the current CEO of Optus, to leave his job. Even the Prime Minister and the Minister for Communications has said that maybe he needs to reconsider his position. Does he? Is this different to what happened in 2023? The other question is, could it happen again? Could more lives be lost? And is there a way of bulletproofing your phone and your provider so that if you cannot ring 000 or a police station, there is another way you can from your existing phone? Apparently there is. Trevor Long, EFTM, joins us after another trip overseas. And Trevor, last Thursday must have brought back memories from November 8, 2023, where 4:05 in the morning, you actually gave me a ring, and I think it was about 4:45 on the Triple M network, and said, mate, something's going on with Optus. Here's what I know. We broke the story first, thanks to you. The then CEO fell on her sword. The response time from Optus was leaving you scratching your head. It was leaving all those Optus customers scratching their heads, and she eventually had to go. And the Prime Minister has even suggested that Mr. Roux, the current CEO, and probably will have gone by the time our chat drops on our podcast. Before we talk about what happened last Thursday, take us back to November 8, 2023, because I can't believe this has happened again.
Yeah, they are 2 vastly different incidents. In November 2023, early in the morning, we were getting reports that people couldn't use the network. And it was very clear straight away that there was an outage of some sort, so we started talking about it straight away. What happened after that was I couldn't get a hold of anyone. And that makes sense because they were all on Optus. Every Optus executive was on Optus, so they couldn't call each other. I couldn't call them, and it was a communications cluster, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And you know, that outage lasted some 13 plus hours. It was, well into the afternoon before it was restored. And, communications over that day and frankly that week were poor. They were better than the cyber attack the year before, but they were still poor. And that, to me, is why the CEO had to fall on a sword. Now, a couple of things. There was a 000 outage as a result of that, which is unusual and strange because when you're on your phone, doesn't work on your network, it normally says emergency SOS, which means if I'm an Optus customer, if my phone says emergency SOS, it means my phone can't see an Optus tower.
Right.
The Optus network's down. And so my phone, being in emergency SOS mode, we'll just use the Vodafone or the Telstra towers to make 000 calls.
Piggyback off it.
Correct. It's called a camp on feature, which means they kind of camp on another network. Somehow that failed for a small part of that outage, and there were 2,145 people who tried to call 000 and could not. The ACMA investigated that, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, in the year following, and they fined Optus $12 million because of that failure, because it's their obligation to provide emergency services contact. But the other part of that fine was Optus failed in their duty to do a welfare check on 360 of those people. A welfare check is a requirement of the legislation, again, that says if you as a telco have a failure in your systems that results in an outage of 000, anyone who tried to call 000, you must contact them. You must try twice to contact them. And if you fail to contact them, you should refer them to police so they can do welfare checks, knock on their door.
Right.
They were fined $12 million because 2,500 people couldn't access 000 and because 360 people didn't get a welfare check. That's what happened 2 years ago. This year, very different.
Right.
Very different. One more similarity. The 2023 outage was as a result of a IT infrastructure upgrade or IT infrastructure failure in the routers. A router is a thing that connects all the computers together and makes sure that traffic flows. That was a IT infrastructure failure. This last week, on Thursday, they were doing an IT infrastructure update on a firewall, which again is just another piece of equipment in a network. And according to the CEO, established processes were not followed, and that resulted in this failure. At 12:30 a.m. on Thursday morning, they did the upgrade, and then they did some checks. They rang each other. It's all working. We're all good.
Yes.
They probably went to bed and they were fine. At 1:30 in the afternoon, 13 hours later, Optus received a call from a customer saying, hey, I think there's a problem. And 20 minutes later, they received a call from the South Australian Police going, we think you've got a problem. And within minutes, they rolled back the IT infrastructure change and everything was working fine again. They then went through a deep process of finding out how many people had tried to call 000 in those last 13 hours. They found around 620 odd people who had tried, and they began the process of ringing each person as per the requirements under legislation because, hey, they stuffed that up last time. They're not going to do it again. They rang all 600 people. They completed those welfare checks. They discovered within that process that tragically 3 people, and later on we found out it was 4 people, had died subsequent to making or attempting to make a 000 call. And they called a press conference and said, listen, we need to be very clear about this. This is what's happened. A couple of things we learned in the process of 3 days. I went to all 3 press conferences at Optus headquarters, and we learned over time that phone call at 1:30 p.m. was not the first phone call a customer made. At 9 a.m. on Thursday morning, a customer rang Optus call centre and said, hey, 000 is not working. 5 other people made that same phone call during the day, and they weren't ignored, but that was not escalated. So let's just role play the phone call.
Yeah.
You're an Optus customer. I'm the call centre.
Yes.
You ring me up.
Yeah.
And tell me your 000 is not working, Luke.
Yes. Well, I've just got a problem. I can't ring 000.
Okay.
And it's an emergency.
Just give me a sec. Let me check our systems. So I'm sitting there and I've got all access to these dashboards and little green lights and red lights. Is everything working? Everything's working. It looks okay. There's no problem with the Optus network. Okay, so all I can suggest is there's no problem with our network. Maybe you should turn it off, turn it back on again. Maybe you should put it into airplane mode and hopefully that'll work for you. Off you go. I don't know that's what happened, but I'm pretty confident that's what that phone call would have sounded like. And that happened 5 times until I think a 6th person rang, and then it got escalated in some way. So the failure there is that either those call center operators didn't know that there'd been multiple calls, probably not. They didn't realize that it was a genuine problem and it didn't get escalated. So Optus has put in place a new rule that anyone that calls the customer call center and says there's a problem with 000, escalate it up to management. But mate, that's what happened. The network was not down. There was no alarms in Optus headquarters, Optus network operations. There was no concern because they didn't know it was down. The minister and the head of ACMA blowing up a treat that they didn't meet their obligations to let them know there was an outage until it was restored. Well, they didn't know there was an outage until they restored it. So it's a really weird balance of criticism of the company.
Yeah.
You mentioned the CEO stepping down. Won't happen, mate. Won't happen. He'll still be the CEO for another 5 years.
Won't.
Because you know why? He's actually a very good leader. What this company needs right now is leadership. What that company didn't have under Kelly Bayer Rosmarin was leadership. Kelly Bayer Rosmarin didn't cause the network outage. She did not deserve to lose her job because they had a network outage. or a cyber hack.
It was the way she handled
It
it.
was the handling of it that was the reason she needed to lose her job. Stephen Roux stood up in front of the media on 25, 29 hours after the outage and said, here's what's happened. That's the quickest we've ever had an announcement about a telco issue. He then stood up again and again, and they've answered every question been asked of them. Their communication is pretty good. And if there's a problem inherently with Optus's network, their infrastructure, mate, what you need is a leader who's going to say, listen, you got to go. We need someone better. You need a leader. I think it's poor form to call for the sacking of a CEO when CEO didn't cause the problem and he hasn't really done anything wrong since.
So it's a blowtorch pylon on the current Optus CEO, and in your opinion, two completely different stuff-ups between November 8, 2023 and last Thursday.
That's right.
Tragically, though, 4 people have died, and that's the thing. And can it happen again?
You know what? I reckon there's been crisis meetings at Vodafone and Telstra.
Yes.
Going, could this happen to us? And they've probably gone, yeah, it probably could. And they've probably gone, you know what, we need to do the same thing. If someone calls about 000, escalate it. I bet you any money the call volumes at 000 have gone up by at least 24 calls. What's 24? 60, 72 calls per hour or per day, because I reckon every telco is calling 000 every hour from their network. Because how else do you know if it's working unless you actually make the call? Because you can't just trust anymore that it says Telstra 5 bars. You can't trust that that means it's working. In Optus's case, just to be clear, you could call your mum, you could call your dad, you could call your mates, you could call work. You could call your local police station, but you couldn't call 000.
Yes.
Tough.
Yeah, and that's the most important one.
Yeah.
It just beggars belief because I don't understand all this technical stuff. All I know is when I buy a watch, I want it to work. I don't care what goes on underneath.
Spot on, yeah.
So in 2023, we saw hundreds of thousands of Optus customers leave because they felt dudded by possibly a CEO that was incompetent or just didn't handle it well. But they came back.
Or lack of trust in the network a year after a cyber attack as well.
Sure, but they came back. How many customers do you think this has cost Optus? And does Optus deserve to lose those customers?
I think that if you're someone who has serious medical concerns, you are evaluating your telco urgently. You're probably going, listen, I can't have faith. I can't have trust. I can't tell you to have trust in Optus because they haven't had an independent review yet, haven't read it, and I don't know how and what they're going to implement in terms of changes. So right now, if I was someone that was erring on the side of potentially needing an ambulance anytime soon because of a medical condition, I would absolutely switch telcos. Do it. Be with Telstra because you probably got more reliability.
Wow.
But I think that's a very small cohort, mate. I really do. I think most people are going, phone still worked. I mean, you know, I've never called 000 in my life. But see, that's the complacency people have is I've never called 000 in my life. What does it matter to me? Mate, the time you need it is the time you need it.
Exactly. I think what customers want is they want coverage and they want value for money. And all the major telcos basically the same when it comes to price?
The big 3 are, but they all have sub-brands and companies that use their networks that are far more affordable. By the time this podcast comes out, at the time of recording, I'm literally writing an article right now to advise people that you can actually outage-proof yourself. So
how?
Quick story back to 2023 when the Optus network failed. I mentioned that I couldn't call people at Optus. And Optus people couldn't call each other because they were all on the Optus network. Well, I guarantee you right now, the CEO of Optus and all of his management team and probably a lot of people down the chain have a second SIM card in their phone. They have a Telstra SIM or a Vodafone SIM because if your network goes down, you want to be able to call a number and so you use a different telco. So on the phone that I'm testing right now, I've got 2 SIM cards, Luke. And when I choose to make a phone call, I can choose, am I going to use the Vodafone SIM or the Telstra SIM? Now, here's the great thing. You might be paying $40 to $60 to $80 a month for your mobile plan. You do not need a second $80 a month mobile plan. If you're a Telstra customer, you can get an AMASIM 365-day expiry plan for $15. You can get a Vodafone 365-day expiry SIM card for $45. If you're with Optus, you can get an Aldi mobile SIM card for $5 that lasts a year.
No way.
Now, every time you make a phone call on that SIM card, it chips away. It's like a credit, but you never make a phone call on that SIM card. You can receive calls all you like, so you can tell your family and friends that you've got this second number. If they can't get through on your main line, this is your emergency line. And you can tell them that if you ever have a problem calling out, like the Optus network goes down again, you can switch to your Telstra or your Vodafone backup SIM and you can make calls. For $45 a year or less, I think everyone should do it. Because what we have now is, the little SIM card that you pop out and you put the plastic in, that's your SIM card, right? Every modern phone from the last 4 to 5 years has what's called an eSIM, electronic SIM card in it. So that's what you get. You get an electronic SIM card from a second telco, as long as they're on another network. Don't be an Optus customer and get an Amasim SIM card. They're on the same network. They're both on Optus. So you need to do a little bit of research. But, mate, you can future-proof yourself and outage-proof yourself for as little as $5 a year. Mate, just a little caveat. Aldi Mobile do not have eSIM today, but next month they will. So for $5, you can have access to the Telstra network if your network goes down, or you just are in a different area and want to use that network.
Do you think it was then inappropriate of the Prime Minister to add the blowtorch to this bloke, Stephen Roux, and say he may be considering his position? Was that inappropriate?
I do think it is. Look, I don't want to jump on a different horse here, but I spoke to Paul Murray on Sky News the other night. Obviously, very opinionated man.
Yes, I know Muzz very well.
We were talking about Peter Malinauskas, the South Australian Premier, who you and I have talked about before. I was very vocal about his views on things.
Yes, I know how you feel about him, and he let us know.
If I feel the same way about his reaction to this whole incident as well. He's blowing up that Optus did a press conference before they told him. Listen, I tell you what would happen if they told Malinauskas before the public. Malinauskas would have had a press conference and told the public before Optus did. They're all politicians doing politics, trying to score points. And what Paul Murray said on Sky News, just to pull from his literal words, was Malinauskas and Roger Cook in Western Australia have huge problems with ambulance ramping, in which hundreds of people have died as a result of sitting in ambulances waiting to get into a hospital, or waiting for an ambulance because ambulances aren't available because they're ramping at hospitals. Yet he's blown up about 2 deaths because 000 failed, which are tragic and horrible. But have some accountability. Who got sacked? Who lost their job because of the ramping that's happening on ambulances in South Australia and Western Australia? So, everyone just calm down. Stephen Roux stood up 3 days in a row, frankly, looking emotional and exhausted because can you imagine being the CEO of a company and someone rings up and goes, mate, we've got a problem. There's been an outage of the 000 network. Okay, look into it. Do this. Take everything you need. And then a minute later going, mate, I've got bad news. Dude, someone died. Someone tried to call 000. That would be heartbreaking for anyone. And also, an individual made the mistake that caused this because they said a due process was not followed. So an Optus employee or contractor made a mistake and is currently living with the burden of potentially 3 or 4 deaths. This is tragic.
It is absolutely tragic.
But just calling for someone's scalp, and again, it's not ironic. People will call me a hypocrite because I called for the scalp of Kelly Bayer Rosmarin very publicly. But she was a shit communicator. She did not communicate with her customers. During their cyber attack in 2022, Optus never contacted the 10,200 people whose names were published on the internet as a result of the hack. They never called them. She had one press conference. They never answer question from the media via email. She had to go because they were useless under her. Stephen Roux is being a leader. I don't know why you get rid of a leader.
I know we're stressed for time. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about, and you've got lots of stuff on EFTM. Look it up, Everything for the Man, Trevor Long and his podcast. It's just gangbusters. But just before I jump to Charlie Kirk, I wanted to ask you this. You said that Optus, under legislation, has an obligation to get in contact with people who've dialed 000 and weren't able to. Is that a person-to-person phone call or is it a text?
Yes.
It has to be person-to-person, right?
No, it's person-to-person. So someone in Optus has to make a phone call. If they don't answer, they log it, they didn't answer, and then I assume they wait a small duration of time and they have to call again. They make 2 phone calls. If they are unable to contact the person, they then refer that name and number to the police, and the police then either conduct a person-to-person knock on the door welfare check or themselves make the phone calls.
Okay. I was just concerned under the legislation they may have just got away with sending you a text saying, are you okay?
No.
Yeah, okay. It has to be person to person. That's better.
And again, mate, just for a minute, think about there were 600 of those phone calls had to be made in less than 24 hours. That was done. Someone at Optus made those phone calls. Someone at Optus called someone who said, no, they died.
Jesus.
Mate, I got chills.
Yes.
I got chills just thinking about that. Like, can we just have some thought about the human beings involved here at every level? The person who made the mistake that caused it, the CEO that took the call that said this has happened, the person who found out someone died, and of course the families who lost someone. It's tragic. It's tragic.
You and I are in the communications business and have been for some time. I do some radio. I'll be on 2GB next week for a week for Clinton, and you're on radio, and you just mentioned you on Sky, you have your very successful podcast. What's happened in the United States vis-a-vis Charlie Kirk and Jimmy Kimmel disturbs me a little bit, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. You've got the President of the United States putting pressure on his employer, and they've taken him off the air, free speech being the First Amendment. I noticed that Jimmy Kimmel and all his supporters were dancing in the streets when Trump was banned from a social media site. They thought that was great. But now Jimmy Kimmel has been silenced. I think it may come back to haunt Trump, but it does concern me. And you look at what Kimmel actually said.
It didn't seem that bad at all.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterise this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and with everything they can do to score political points from. Did that deserve him being silenced and sacked? Does it concern you as a broadcaster?
Yeah, it does. But, inherently, he's a broadcaster, but he's also an employee. So it's all well and good to say free speech, but he's an employee of a corporation. And I think all of us, in some way, in the back of our heads, do think about what I'm about to do, the task I'm about to undertake, the thing I'm about to say, whatever it might be. What's the impact of that on my job? On my employer? What's my boss going to think?
But when I broadcast for a radio station like 2GB, I have to protect their license. I've been doing this a fair while now, and I understand what the ACMA rules are. But when you and I podcast, there is a thing called freedom of speech, but there are consequences.
Correct.
If you and I commit libel or defamation, we'll be before the courts.
But you can't tell me that someone that works at News Limited's a good example. People often go on about Rupert and stuff. You can't tell me that in your back of your mind you're not thinking about the ownership. You're not. There's not some sense of, if I do this, it goes completely against the direction that this whole ship that we're on has. Now, there's no way Jimmy Kimmel should have been taken off the air. No way at all. Same with Stephen Colbert. Unless the Stephen Colbert thing's slightly different because it's costing them $200 million a year to make a show. I'm just like, maybe you need some cost cutting. Maybe you need less people. Maybe you need robot cameras. Maybe you need less writers. Maybe there's some cost cutting that needs to be done. I'll tell you that's what's going to happen here is actually what will happen is shrinkage in the industry. They'll realize that you can still make this content, but you can make it a lot cheaper and on different platforms. Unfortunately for Jimmy Kimmel, his upper management are trying to do a deal to buy a whole bunch of television stations and they need the approval of the administration. And rightly or wrongly, that administration is super focused on one man, and that's the boss. That's the president. So they're pandering. The administration is pandering to the boss. Mate, it's probably going to be good to get rid of the Trump years. I don't mind. I think it's hilarious to watch. I go to America all the time.
It gives us lots of content, but I would hate to be working for an organisation where my opinions were being channeled by a political power.
Yeah.
Because the station wouldn't get funding from one of the companies that's owned or was going to be hampered.
It's probably disappointing for Kimmel and others that they didn't get a phone call saying, mate, can you drop off? And then you could have resigned on air. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it would have been so much better for Kimmel to say they're trying to silence me, so I quit. Like, it would have been a better story for them.
Better theatre.
Yeah, but they didn't get the chance because he's actually indefinitely suspended right now, right? So actually, I'm surprised he hasn't done that. Probably because he's trying to go for unfair dismissal. But I'm surprised they haven't just come out and said, I don't want my job back because I won't pander to this government. I don't know, man. It's a tough one.
Isn't it scary to think that someone can get shot for voicing an opinion?
And just finally on that, I think it's really important to say, I was in America when it happened and, dude, I've seen some stuff. I've seen some stuff in my years.
Have you got time to paint that picture for us?
Well, it was wall-to-wall coverage, non-stop. There's not many events that have been like that in my lifetime that was just every channel complete non-stop wall-to-wall coverage. But on social media, mate, it was scary to me how many angles of that I was able to see. Sickening in a sense. I remember you and I working together during things like the Iraq War and stuff like that, where there was some pretty egregious things being videoed by ISIS and put on the internet. And we kind of had to watch them for coverage. And, it's a terrible exposure to have to those kind of things. But, mate, that was a brutal thing to witness and for there to be video of. And the fact, frankly, that Twitter, Elon Musk just lets that stuff, because of free speech, just lets videos like that be part of his platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bigger worry than anything else. Mate, I flew home, and my kids on Saturday morning were like, did you hear what happened to Charlie Kirk? And I'm thinking, how do you know who Charlie Kirk is? You're 13 and 14, for Christ's sake. And I said, listen, have you seen the video? And they go, no. I said, well, whatever happens, scroll past it, because you don't need to see that.
Isn't it funny? Because the day it happened, I was on this podcast. I recorded straight away with Jason Morrison. And Jason said, I'm neither here nor there on Charlie Kirk. I know he's very popular. He said, but my teenage son's in tears.
Yeah.
That's the demographic. Isn't that interesting?
He was a social media star because the clips were unbelievable,
In short grabs.
Person says this thing.
Bang.
But what about this? And putting the microphone down. Like, he would put the microphone down as if to say, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. It's not an argument. He doesn't hold the microphone like this. Yeah. He would say, okay, but what is a woman? And just wait. It was genius debating, in inverted commas, which earned him a lot of social media credibility. And that's exactly why Trump and people of that ilk loved him.
And he brought a lot of younger demographic Americans to the Republicans.
Well, mate, politics needs the younger demographic. Let's be clear.
Oh, yeah.
The youngest demographic in Australia are completely disconnected from politics.
Yes.
And so engaging them is a great thing. So I respected what Charlie Kirk did to engage the audience and a different demographic in politics, and it's just tragic that what happened to him.
When I look at my kids, a lot of what they learn is in 40-second grabs on TikTok or YouTube. Yeah. Trevor, how do people listen to you? How do people get in touch?
Everything that they need about me is at EFTM.com.
EFTM, Trevor Long. There's so much more to talk about. You got to go. You have a commitment. Thanks for your time today. Let's talk again soon.
Pleasure, mate.
Trevor Long.
Anytime.
The Man Cave without the Vice Captain, but we've got the Vice Captain, Scotty Phillips. That's next.
Start listening to Bonafide. It's a really good podcast show. Available on Spotify. It's a really good download. Stop apologizing for missing an episode. Time is short, life is good. It's time for us to turn to a hardcore man cave.
Well, it's a different sort of a man cave today because the Vice Captain is away. He's at a trade show or something. We'll catch up with him next week and find out what that's all about. And the millennial, her dad's over from Perth, and so she's spending time with him, which is important. So it's just me and Scotty Phillips today from the Motley Fool. But you know what, Scotty, we will press on and we'll have a bit of fun and we'll talk about some of the news stories that are on my mind. But more importantly, I want to know what's on yours. G'day.
Luke, g'day, mate. Thanks for having me. I kind of felt like I'm the under-23s player being brought up to first grade because the two halfbacks are out injured. I've got the Vice Captain Millennial out here. I guess you've got to stick with Phillips. On the scorecard, it's going to be court sub, bold boner is kind of how I'm subtitling this episode, mate.
Let me just correct you. You are actually the Terry Lamb because you play in any position.
I was going to say because I went after Ellery Hanley in the grand final. But that's a whole different thing.
When I was at TUE, I had a listener come up to me at one of these outside broadcasts. And he said, Luke, you're the Terry Lamb of broadcasting. You can play in any position. But anyway, Scotty Phillips from the Motley Fool. Before we start, the Motley Fool, what's it all about?
Oh, mate, thanks. We give investment advice to Australians. So pretty straight up and down. General advice only. We don't give personal advice. We tell you what stocks we think you should buy. Hopefully tell you a bit about the markets, what's going on, explain some of the economy and finance and kind of whatever's on my mind. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I'm not short of an opinion, which is probably why I'm here, Luke. Yeah, mate, just we try and help Australians invest better, mate. Pretty straightforward. Not too grandiose. We don't always get it right, but we do as best we can.
It might be a topic for another day. We'll see how we go for time today because I'm sitting on a fair bit of super, and I won't broadcast it here, but I'm happy to tell you off air. And I've kept it where it is because it's working. I can actually access it if I want, but it's nice to still have it sitting there. But you hear about a lot of super funds falling over and people who have been saving all their professional lives and having their super just disappear overnight. And it's scary. It's with AMP, but they invest it in different places and some's in stocks, some's in cash, some's in this and some's in that. I don't know. I'm not smart enough for all of that. But it is a question that a lot of Australians are now having to ask themselves, what do I do with my super? Do I invest it? Do I buy an investment property? Do I help the kids get into a home? Or do I sit on this little nest egg and watch it tick over? It's a reasonable question, isn't it?
It's a bloody good question. And I've got to say, the Motley Fool helps people invest themselves, right? So our job is if you want to invest, you come to us and we try and help you, right? So that's kind of what we do. But it's also true, I reckon, mate, that as much as super is great in the sense it gives us all control over our financial futures, which is really important, some people don't want to or can't or aren't suited to it. So it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. And that's not to be condescending, right? I can't fix a car, so I take it to someone else who can. We're not all told, well, you've got your own car now, make your own decisions, do your own repairs, you should be fine. But that's kind of what we do with super. I mean, you can put it in someone else's hands, you're with AMP, so they're going to do it for you. But even making those decisions about what do I do with it, how do I position it, when do I take it out, how much is enough, I kind of reckon I'd rather have super than not, but it does add that anxiety, that fear, as you say, mate, to trying to work out what does retirement look like, what's enough. And you know what, here's an amazing stat. It's something like, and I haven't got it in front of me, something like 80% of people die with more super than they had when they retired. And that's because they're scared to spend it. So back to that fear thing, and even if you've got enough, you're still thinking, well, I could spend it, I could go on that holiday, I could replace the car, I could, get new curtains, but maybe I might need it later, so I won't spend it just in case. And so you've got this really kind of, it's pretty sad. I mean, people aren't maximising their enjoyment in retirement because they're worried about running out of money. And that's kind of one of those side effects of super. When you had the pension, you got the pension for life, you knew how much it was, you could spend everything every week because you knew that, the next payment was coming next week. But because people aren't used to investing, because it's hard and scary and share prices are volatile and property prices are uncertain, people do kind of go, well, I don't know how much I can afford to spend. So, mate, it's a massive question and a really, really good one.
It's a question that needs a deeper dive than what we can give it today. And I tell you what, I wouldn't mind, even though Shane Oliver is a regular on the podcast and he is the chief economist with AMP, he's also very fair. And maybe it'd be a good thing to have you and Shane on, and we can discuss it, and invite listeners to write in or leave a voice message or leave their details, and we can answer some questions on what to do.
Great idea. Mate, I can't give personal advice to individuals. So when we do that, someone will say, look, I've got this much money, what should I do? I'm not going to be able to answer that question. No one's allowed to, because the rules are big and detailed, and you have to produce a phone book worth of paperwork to give personal advice, right? Which is why we don't do it. But absolutely, someone says, look, in this sort of situation, what should I consider? What should I think about? Or what would you advise? I can answer those questions generally for sure. So, absolutely, let's do it, mate. I reckon that'd be great for your listeners.
And is property still a good investment? Because I know a lot of people who own investment properties. This is just my personal observation. But a lot of people I know who had investment properties are selling them because there's a lot of taxes involved. There's very little incentive. I know that there were some great tax incentives in owning an investment property, but we have a housing shortage and a rental shortage. There's a lack of stock, and yet immigration continues. I don't know what the answer is, because a lot of people are still getting very good returns on their rental, especially in Sydney and Melbourne.
If you bought a while ago, that's absolutely true. And this is where, what's really hard for people. I often say, mate, investing well, to invest well, the answer is to subdue every evolutionary impulse that we have, right? So why? Because we're not born for it. We're born to run away from lions and to find food on the day. When you say to somebody, put some money away for 40, 50 years, it's going to be volatile and scary, but do it anyway. Think long term. The past will look at the future. We're pattern-seeking animals. That's what we do with animals. That's what we just are. We just happen to be shaved down and walking on 2 feet. So the challenge for all that property question is, are people doing well? Yeah, they've done incredibly over the last 45 years. Does that mean the future will be great? I'll give you an example in the share market, mate. Bank shares are widely assumed by everybody to have been fantastic investments, and they were. Most people don't know over the last 5 or 6 years, bank shares have been awful as an investment, because they're looking back and saying, well, the 40-year graph looks good. So what gets you here doesn't necessarily get you there. In other words, we can't assume these things are going to keep happening. So is property a great investment? It has been, yes. If you own it outright, you're getting some rent, that's fantastic. It's a solid asset, you know it, you can see it. You're less likely to be scared of selling it when the share price falls of a company. Your property's just there, you're not going to freak out and get rid of it. So it's really good for a whole lot of people. Again, maybe a conversation for another day, mate, because it's a long conversation. But I reckon property prices are unlikely to increase in future the way they have in the past. And the very simple example, or very simple rationale without going too deep, is wages. So housing prices have increased faster than wages over the last 40 years. Now, if that was to continue forever, let's make it super extreme, right? At some point, you're paying 105% of your income on mortgage repayments. Now, that can't happen by definition. So if that can't happen, at what point does it stop? And most people are paying somewhere between a third and 50% of their disposable income in housing repayments and rent right now. So can that go up another 10, 15, 20? Yeah, I mean, it can go up a lot. But are we going to get to a point where 80% of incomes are on mortgages? Probably not. 70? Probably not. So at some point, housing as a group has to go back to an average of wage increases because we can't magic the money. Either the wages go up faster than we think, or property prices go up slower than we think, but you can't stretch that rubber band forever. We've stretched it a long way without it breaking. So I'm not saying they're going to be bad investments. I'm saying people shouldn't own or buy investment properties. I am saying the future can't mathematically be as good as the last 40 years have been.
Do you know what I really regret? Just riffing for a sec.
Go on.
I tell you what I really regret, not putting aside money for super before it became compulsory. The compulsory super came into Australia under Keating back in 1992. It was July 1, I remember. And I think then the contribution rate was about 3%. It went up to 4%. I think now it's 12%.
Yeah,
and I really regret not putting money away in super. But you see, I entered the workforce at 16 years of age and 4 months. 18th of September, 1978. Office boy at 2GB. $64.60 a week in cash in a yellow envelope.
Yes.
I had to give $20 of that 60 to mum for board, and I got by. But I thought when you're 16, you're bulletproof, and you don't think about when you're going to be 67. You just don't, or whatever, whenever it is. I got the punt from Triple M a couple of years ago. Well, it was 18 months ago now. And luckily, thank you, Paul Keating, for introducing compulsory superannuation. And I really wish I'd put money aside before it was compulsory. I'd hate to think what I'd be sitting on. I don't know. But it was a good thing, wasn't it?
A spectacularly great thing. I'm pretty sure, riffing off the top of my head, I reckon it's probably the best financial government policy in the last 50 years. I don't think as much. If you go to the early 80s, there's the Australian dollar and price of wages accords and all those kind of really, really kind of fun economic things, but boring for everybody else. But definitely since 1990, the single best economic policy bar none, including the GST, by the way, super is so much better. And it's exactly because of what you said, Luke. No one at 16 or 18 or 25 or 28 or 32 can think about retirement. And even if you do, you think, I know I should, but there's always a reason not to. And that's why super is so bloody fantastic, because the government make us do what we don't want to do at the time. I think I've said to you before, mate, I have not met a single retiree who said, I really wish there was no superannuation, right? Who said, I put too much money away. Or, why did they make me do this? In the moment, if I had 10% or 12% more in my pay, would I save all that? Maybe, but I probably wouldn't. I might say, I'll save a little bit, but I really do need the new car. And honey, we probably should take a holiday. And I know you want to redo the floor, so let's do that. And the kitchen's looking a bit old. And there's always a reason to spend everything. That's why it has to be compulsory. It's literally the nature of super, which is if we're not made to, we won't do it. Now, there are some people listening who are saying, well, that's an impingement on our freedoms. And I get that view, honestly. I really genuinely do. I'm not brushing that off. I think on balance, we know, and again, people who complain about it are workers. No retiree ever complains about super. And that's the clue, right? Because, and I mentioned the evolutionary stuff, mate, when we, got out of the trees on the savannah in Africa, we heard a lion roar, we ran away. We gathered enough food for the day because we didn't have refrigeration or silos. So we're designed to think about right now. We're designed to respond to fear, because you can say, well, that sounds like a lion. I'll wait and see if he gets a bit closer. Gee, he's getting closer. I wonder if he'll come and eat me. Gee, now he's a metre away. I'm screwed. When he's a kilometre away, you're like, I'm out of here. I'm back up that tree, right? Because I can't afford to not do it. So those are the evolutionary impulses that really screw us up in investing. And it's why when you're 18, our brains, we're literally we're not designed, we're evolved, but we're not evolved to think about 50 years. No one in the savannah is like, you know what I might do? I might build a cave, and I'll build a cave that'll last 55 years, and I'll do, you just don't, right? You eat for today, you eat the mammoth when you catch it, you run away from the lion when he roars, you throw a skin on when you can afford to, maybe you keep a second one just in case. You can't carry it anywhere and they spoil, so, and I'm overdoing it here, but you get the idea, right? So super is absolutely all about, we know, those of us with a few greyer hairs or no hair as I have, know what it was like to be 16, to your very point. And that's why hopefully the greybeards of us will say, I know what it's like to be 16 and 18 and 25. And I know that right then you hate the fact I'm making you put money away. But trust me, when you're me, because I was you'll be very, very thankful that we're doing it. So yeah, best policy in forever. The real tragedy, mate, was governments successively wimped out on increasing the rate to 12% quickly enough. It took 33 years based on your numbers. We literally only got to 12% on July 1. It should have been 12% 20 years ago. Now think about that. Take your super, take my super, take anyone listening who was in the workforce during that period. More of your money should have been put in super, Luke. You should have a much bigger super balance now. The government squibbed it because the pressure groups and the lobby groups said we don't want to do it, and it was all that kind of palaver. Thank God we finally got here. But that's the other thing, right? So if you start work on July 1 this year, you're the first person to get 12% right through your working life. We're not going to see the full benefit for 40 years. And that's one of my favourite quotes. It's a bit highfalutin, a bit arrogant, but the old Greek saying, society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they will not sit.
Yeah, that's very good. That's
what super is. That's exactly what super is.
Very good.
Keating's going to be gone by the time that person with 12% retires. The Parliament then, me, I'm not going to be around when that person retires, but they will retire with more than they would have had, and that is a real national benefit that we shouldn't ignore.
I'm just thinking, just riffing, I'm just thinking of another significant financial decision made by an Australian government. That was Howard's GST, because it was designed to catch the cash economy. Has it worked? Do you think we should be paid less in direct income tax but pay a bit more in GST? What did you make of that financial decision?
Here's the problem, right? I'm going to say it's great because it collects more money. And again, most of us will be like, what do you mean, Philip? You want me to be taxed more? No, I don't. Collecting the cash economy was the first thing. Second thing was it was a growth tax. In other words, it would increase as the economy got bigger and keep pace with the need for government spending. So that was also important. Now, we've not indexed the tax bracket, so to some degree, income tax has become a growth tax anyway. But the GST as designed was supposed to grow with the economy. And then, of course, it was earmarked for the states, so it meant the states had certainty of revenues. Those things were really, really, really important. Really, as I said, superannuation, clearly number one with a bullet. GST, definitely in the top 5. There's other regulations and reforms and stuff, but, a very, very good decision. The Democrats screwed it by taking it off fresh food and other products. That makes it harder to collect, harder to calculate. John Hewson, of course, with the famous birthday cake interview,
Mike Willesee
was a version of that, right? Exactly. Now, Howard's GST, by the way, went to the election as on everything really simple. The Democrats tried to play funny buggers in the Senate, killed themselves politically, and screwed the GST up. So it should be broader, should be on absolutely everything, including everything food, feminine hygiene products, education, the lot. Why? Because it's simple and easy to do. You can then provide and should provide offsets for lower income earners so they're not screwed by it. So that should be really easy and straightforward as well. Do both of those things, and then you've got a better solution. To your point about income tax, absolutely, mate. We're penalising employment. Payroll tax, also bloody stupid.
Can you believe we live in a country where you're taxed to employ people?
Yeah. So you're literally making it more expensive to hire a person than a machine to replace them. It is madness. Like overseas, same thing. There's no payroll tax in India or Philippines or New Zealand. Maybe there is, but not for Australian employers. My point is we're incentivising companies to employ fewer Australians. Stupid. So yes, get rid of payroll tax. Reduce the income tax threshold. I'd, by the way, get rid of 95% of deductions as well, mate. Almost every deduction is designed as a special interest stop, right? You get something because you're important. If I give this to you, you might vote for me or you might not, run an ad against me. So the whole system needs to be blown up and redone. But as a very start, get rid of payroll tax, reduce income tax, increase consumption tax, GST, absolutely in a heartbeat. But also I'm very, very clear, you can't increase the GST on pensioners, welfare recipients, low-income earners without giving them something to offset it. So you've got to make that work in one shape or another. But we'd be a much, much, much better economy if we taxed consumption more and income less.
Something else I hear from a lot of my kids' friends who are struggling to find somewhere to live, struggling to find somewhere to afford to rent, and having children. And they'll say, the reason I don't want to have children is because I can't be sure that I'll have a roof to put over their head. I don't know where we'll be living in 10 years' time. I don't feel secure in my job. And we've done our homework, and I've seen my older brothers and sisters tell me how much childcare costs. And it's not worth going to work when nearly 100% of that second wage is spent on childcare. Should childcare fees be regulated in some way? How do we? The reason I'm asking you this, Scotty, is Australians are not breeding at the moment, not at the rate, and that's why we're bringing in so many people from overseas, because there are jobs here that need to be filled, particularly trades jobs, I reckon, but they're not breeding, and the main reason I'm given is cost of living. Now, childcare fees. Should they be regulated? I mean, they are. I'm not talking about council and government-run childcare centres. I'm talking about private enterprise. In this country, when you run a private enterprise, we don't live in China or Russia or wherever. Where you should be able to charge. Demand should be able to dictate the price you charge for a product. That's how capitalism works. But should childcare be regulated?
Mate, I could spend the next hour doing this. Can I go half a step back, actually, before I come back to your question? I think I'm a finance guy. I'm an economics guy. I care about the economy. I care about productivity. I care about GDP. I care about all the things that economists and finance people are supposed to care about. But we've got to remember, and this shouldn't be news to anyone listening, it's news to economists sometimes, the economy is there to serve society, not the other way around, right? In other words, we don't put the economy at the top. The economy is not the point. The economy is how we do the things we want to do and get the things we want. So the first question actually should be, should we have as much childcare? Should parents be able to make alternative choices if they want? And parents, not women. I don't care. I'd happily stay home if my wife wants to work to look after a kid, right? So should parents be able to choose in the first instance? Childcare has become compulsory because second incomes are compulsory because living costs are massive. So we got the whole thing, frankly, asked backwards, if I can say that. We should be starting with, what do we want the society to look like? And so if people want to work, if women want to work, we should absolutely support that. They should be paid equally, paid fairly, every possibility given to them as to blokes. So that should be possible, able to be done, worthwhile, great. It's good for productivity too. If they don't want to work, or if they want to share the work. If I work 3 days a week, my wife works 2 days a week, or vice versa. If I work nights, she works mornings. If I want to take a year off, if she wants to take a year off, we should be able to do that and not need to work, which puts the childcare question in some context, which we'll get back to. So we've got to start with, let's design the country we want that gives Australians the quality of life choices that they want to have. I want to have this sort of house. I want to have this sort of income. I want to have this sort of family arrangement where I can work or not work. And if I want childcare, it should be made available. But let's start from there. Childcare is expensive. Why? You mentioned supply and demand. Demand is through the roof because young couples, you made the point, can't afford not to work. So if you have kids, your choice is, well, can I afford to have the kids in the first place? If I can only afford the kids if I go to work. So now if I want to stay home, I can't. So I've got to have the kid. I've still got to work. Therefore, I've got to have childcare, which gets us then to your question. So we got to address that stuff first. It's almost the Julia Gillard, I reject the premise of your question, right? Because whether we regulate childcare costs, that probably goes away if we fix the economy. But on childcare costs, mate, I get accused of being to the right of Liberal Party and being a socialist at the same time on Twitter.
You're doing something right then.
Well, that's what I figure, but it depends who you believe, what you want to think. I would honestly, mate, I would put, and the other thing, there's a difference between childcare and early childhood education too, by the way. There's daycare, which is us looking after the kid, and there's genuine education of the pre-kindergarten, pre-primary school age group. So I think early childhood education is really important we know that. Thrive by 5, the Minderoo Foundation, the Forests Fund, they do a spectacular job. Former SA Premier Jay Weatherill runs the thing. It's great. So early childhood education, really, really important, but that's not the same as childcare for its own sake. So if it was me, I would actually put early childhood education inside the primary school system and make it a publicly provided solution. So you've already mentioned government and council. That actually absolutely exists. I would go a step further. Now, I wouldn't exclude private providers. They can absolutely be there, like we have private schools. But I think we should have free provision of early childhood education for anybody who wants it, the same as we have primary and secondary education that's provided free, because early childhood education is really important for the kid. The daycare, the childcare bit, the after and before hours care, I'm no family expert, mate. I'm a child development expert. I think I would put a very large amount of money. If you surveyed working Australians and said, would you prefer to work fewer hours and be at home with the kid if you didn't need the money? A very, very large minority of people would choose to spend more, not all, and again, not blokes or women, but both, would choose to spend more time at home rather than more time at work because they simply have no choice. So fix that, make early child education part of the primary school system and have private providers as well. But if you provide enough public, private schools are a choice. You can get into any public school you want around the country anytime you want. You can choose to opt out, but you don't have to try and get a spot. Right now, we've got limited spots of early childhood education. That's the problem. Make it publicly provided, make it universal, like primary education. I think you go a long, long way to fixing that, as long as we also fix the economy bit at the same time.
I haven't asked you this. Do you have kids?
Yeah, I got a 12-year-old and I have a 29-year-old stepson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both ends of the spectrum.
Just while we're on the subject of childcare, I've got to ask your thoughts on this.
Yeah, go on.
You know where I'm going.
I don't actually.
It's a kindergarten in Brisbane, the Craigsley Kindergarten.
Yep.
The Craigsley Kindergarten Preschool at Kernside West.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a parent who's got a young child there, and they do little paintings and little craft works. And, well, they've got a new administrator in there, and he thought it'd be a good idea to charge the parents for their children's own artwork. I'm talking $2,200. $2,200 for a child's piece of art that if it's any good, you might put it on the fridge. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
I'm absolutely serious.
It's extortion. That's all it is. It's trying to hit people.
Anyway, the outraged mother who complained and took her child's portfolio home despite they had a security guard who wouldn't let them in the classroom.
And they wanted her charged with theft, break and enter, for taking the kids' art home.
Folks, you cannot make this up. A mother wanted her child.
It should be an episode of The Castle, mate.
They have a portfolio. There's a photo of the child, which you want to have full control of that if you're a parent. But there's paintings and things. $2,200 is what they were charging for the parent to take their own child's artwork. What do you make of this?
Absolute stupidity. Stupidity from a million different directions. I mean, it's obviously a stupid charge. It's extortion. You're trying to find a price at which your parents feel guilty enough to pay for the art so they can take it home because little Johnny or little Jane wants Mummy, why don't we have it on the fridge? Well, okay, I guess I'll buy it.
I can't afford it.
It's right. Well, it's pester power, right? It's equivalent of the jockey at the checkout. No, but it's absolute rubbish. And by the way, this is a gift for politicians, right? And for us on a podcast. David Christodoulou, the Queensland Premier, got to call it un-Australian, which is always the Polly's favourite thing when you can get some sympathy by calling something un-Australian. You're going to get some votes out of it. It's atrocious. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. The childcare centre is in financial trouble. So be it. Extorting the parents is absolute nonsense. It makes. I mean, it was always going to be a media debacle anyway. To imagine you can get away with it is just stupidity. It's not defensible. It's almost one of those things where, as I said, it should have been an episode of The Castle, right? Daryl Kerrigan storming in there, taking the paintings out and that being charged. I mean, that's The Castle Mark II. If Working Dog aren't doing it, they should be. No, it's obviously stupidity, absolutely stupidity. They thought they'd get away with it. They got some holes to fill, and they tried to rip parents off to make it happen, using their kids as leverage. It's pretty bloody rough. I think it's
Remember when
I don't enough words.
You remember when Daryl Kerrigan got the shits with the developer and put his tow truck, put chains around his gates and took off with them? How good was that?
Oh, the Farouk episode, or there's plenty of good stuff in that one. The photocopier scene is. Can I tell you a castle story, Luke? I know you'll appreciate this given we're just riffing. So speaking of my young bloke, in 2019, we went to the Birdsville Big Red Bash,
right,
which is a music festival at the base of the bigger sand dune on the Simpson Desert out past Birdsville. Had just a great trip and a fantastic. If you get the chance, go and do it. It's brilliant. Take the podcast out there, mate. You'll love it. Yeah. So we went up there. So they have 3 days of music. And you can go in the night before, like Australian acts, by the way. So we saw Midnight Oil and Barnsley, and lots of fantastic. Anyway, the night before, you can get in there and they just do it. They put a movie on the big screen for those who have camped a day early. We thought, well, we're going all the way from south of Sydney. We're in Bowral in the Southern Highlands. We'll go early, get a camp spot, just set up, chill out, do our thing. And they had the castle on. And my wife and I looked at each other and went, oh, the castle's okay for a 6-year-old, isn't it? Oh, yeah, pretty sure. Anyway, then the photocopier scene comes on. When Dennis Denudo is the F-bomb is flying. So, F4, where the F's F4? And he must swear, I got to say, 25 times in 2 minutes. And we're slinking slowly further and further in our chairs while young bloke's looking around going, had this smile on his face like, he's saying a naughty word, and I know he's saying a naughty word, and you're letting me watch this. He has never, ever let us forget it, mate. About once every 3 or 4 months, he reminds us that we let him watch The Castle when he was 6, much to our chagrin and ongoing parental negligence. It was not our finest moment.
And I'll tell you something else you don't want to do. When you are a little bit older, maybe in your early teens, watching a telly show or a movie with your parents, and there's a very, very explicit sex scene going on the telly, and you're sitting there with your mum and dad.
Desperately avoiding eye contact. Do you remember the Seinfeld Master of His Domain episode? I had a friend who watched that with her grandmother.
Contest.
And then
the contest.
Yes, that's right.
That was the turning point of Seinfeld. When that episode, it was the water cooler episode around the world. And they and NBC allowed them to do it. They thought there's no way this will get through. And I'm queen of the county. I am lord of the manor.
Yes.
And then after 5 minutes, Kramer comes back. I'm out.
Exactly.
Oh, and Elaine says, "Well, put me in." No, you're double or nothing. What? You don't think women do it? Not every day. I shave my legs. Not every day. We are men. We have to. It's part of our DNA. Anyway,
That's
sorry,
not
go
our
on.
fault. Random tangent on speaking of TV. The West Wing episode. I love the West Wing. You a West
I
Wing
never
fan?
got into it. I
Oh,
know
mate, do yourself
everyone
a favour.
tells me
Please.
I never got into Breaking Bad either, and everyone.
No, me either. I've never seen it.
And I am proud to say, I have never seen one episode of a Kardashian. Not one.
I have not seen Game of Thrones either, by the way.
Me too. But anyway, West Wing.
Only to say, so in one of the most famous episodes, Two Cathedrals, I think it's called, Martin Sheen as the president goes into the church and basically abuses God for everything. His secretary was killed in a car accident. He does it anyway. So he's in the church and he basically swears at God in Latin, and they did it because they knew the censors would pull it off if it was in English.
Right.
And the bet was that the censors wouldn't bother trying to translate the Latin, and it would go to air. And it went to air because Aaron Sorkin, who was the writer, knew or gambled that if Martin Sheen did the whole thing in Latin, of course Sheen was a professor, so he knew Latin and all that kind of stuff. He's a devout Catholic, so that's the backstory. But yeah, he swears at God in Latin, stubs a cigarette out on the floor of the cathedral. By the way, the cathedral then after that wouldn't let anyone do episodes there, and swears at God in Latin. So there you go. That's how that got through the censors, because they didn't bother translating it.
There's a story of a famous NBA basketballer who was from Lithuania, I think. I'll Google his name in a second. And he used to swear at the referees in his native tongue until he came across a Lithuanian referee and was immediately tech fouled. And
that's brilliant.
I know, but so it was okay when no one understood it.
Yeah.
Best television program that you've ever seen, a series. I mean, everyone says I am a Seinfeld tragic, and there seems to be a Seinfeld life moment for everything. But
that's right.
But what's yours? I mean,
so it's not a lie if you believe it, Luke.
That's right.
Yeah, West Wing, mate. Seriously, do me a favour. Just watch 2 episodes of it. It takes a little bit to get into because it's new characters and all that kind of stuff. They're all very good at introducing the characters. I've watched this whole series maybe twice through. It's 7 seasons. You have to watch the whole lot. But just very, very, very good great television. You know, for all the, and I'm a bit of a politics tragic too, so it kind of helps. But West Wing with a bullet. The first season of House of Cards was spectacularly good. Kind of lost me after that, but I thought that was just a masterful TV. Kevin Spacey's potential alleged wrongdoing notwithstanding, it was just brilliant TV. Really dark. Like I was in a terrible mood after watching some of those episodes. It was really depressing, but spectacularly good TV. They're probably the top 2, I reckon. Big Seinfeld fan. I mean, we can go to really corny childhood stuff like the A-Team just for sheer enjoyment,
really?
MASH and that kind.
Do you
MASH
know
actually
what?
really
Do
good.
you know what? Mr. T never actually said in any episode, "I pity the fool." I think that came from Rocky 3, but I don't think he actually said, "I pity the fool" in the A-Team.
There you go. I ain't getting on no plane, Hannibal. He said a lot of times.
It was a very funny show. It was a
very funny show. George Papard was brilliant as Hannibal. MASH. You know what, MASH, we watched as kids. If you watch it back now, some of those episodes, they get pretty deep and pretty, like there's some really
especially
funny
the
gag
ones
moments.
Written and directed by Alan Alda.
Exactly.
He got very maudlin, didn't he?
Yeah. But also really powerful TV. A bit much and kind of, they're almost standalone as separate episodes, but some of the ones with the psychologist whose names I can't recall, but I can picture him. There were some very, very, very good episodes.
Dr. Sydney.
Yes. Sydney. Oh, God. Yeah. But anyway, great TV. Like, I won't say ahead of its time, but I think better in hindsight than we thought it was at the time when you kind of think about it as the full canon. And, of course, the famous Goodbye, Farewell, Amen episode was the most watched TV show in history and deservedly so. Just really, really fantastic TV. Very, very well. What else do I like?
Sidney Friedman.
Well done.
It was played by Alan Airbus,
right,
who was a former photographer. I'm just looking at here. Sidney Friedman, great character.
He played that role very, very well. You know what, also, speaking of 12-year-olds, last couple of nights between the weekend and now, we've just watched Rocky and Rocky 2. We watched Rocky, I think, Monday night or Sunday, and Rocky 2 last night. We got through the whole thing. So kind of getting my unlock into that one. Rocky 1, surprisingly art house, independent, not much action. I kind of went, watch Rocky. We all remember the moments, hitting the meat and running up the stairs and that kind of stuff. It's a 2-hour movie, and for the first hour and a half, kind of like a down-and-out love story, which is actually interesting. But for a kid, I was trying to keep him hooked in. It took forever to get to the action stuff.
You are 100% correct. Rocky 1 is a love story, not a boxing story.
Yes.
And Stallone wrote it.
Yes, directed it. I think he directed 1 and 2.
And he insisted that he play the lead role, and the studio said, "No, there's no way in the world." He said, "Well, stuff you then. I'm walking." But won an Academy Award, and his wife in the movie, Talia Shire. Now, she was Connie in The Godfather.
Oh, that's right.
She was, Adrian.
Yo, Adrian.
Yeah,
we did it. Yeah. No, such a good movie.
But you look at Talia Shire, and the character that she played in The Godfather, and then you look at the character she played in Rocky, unbelievable. And of course, she is the sister of Francis Ford Coppola, the director of The Godfather. Did you know that?
I did not. And then, of course, Sofia Coppola directed Lost in Translation, one of the best movies ever made as well.
There you go,
His daughter.
Talia Shire, Francis Ford Coppola's sister. And I'll give you another bit of Godfather trivia.
Yeah, go on.
It's that amazing scene where Michael has now taken over the family business, and he gets rid of the 5 families. He gets rid of all his enemies. Yeah, and there's that church scene because he's agreed to go godfather for Connie and her husband. And the little baby at the baptism is Francis Ford Coppola's baby.
That's great. Very cool. Do you know, speaking of things we haven't seen, I've never seen The Godfather, Luke. That's it.
What?
Know the music. I've never seen the movie. I know, right?
Arguably the best movie ever made. Look, this is a topic for Shane Adam Bassett. But Godfather 2, I mean, both won Best Picture. Both movies that probably never should have been made. How they got made is unbelievable.
Right.
And you've never seen it? I will watch West Wing if you watch The Godfather.
Deal. All right, we'll compare notes. Promise. By the way, you want to feel old? Talia Shire is 79 now.
No way.
And the Rocky was made almost 50 years ago.
Stop it.
I know.
Stop it. Hey, listen, we were having a discussion the other day. You talk about being Australian. Do you reckon it should be law for pedestrians to keep to the left like our cars? You know when you're in a busy street, you walk, and everyone's walking towards you, and there's... Don't you reckon there should be signs and a line? Please keep left. Like people who don't stay to the left on the escalators. They shit me to tears.
Yeah,
It's not a ride. Walk or stay to the left.
I wouldn't go law, mate. I'm happy to... Again, as I said, I'm a socialist and to the right of the Liberal Party, if you ask people on Twitter. I'll happily ban some stuff. I don't reckon we need more laws about where we walk, but it's just bloody common courtesy. I spend a lot of time, so my 12-year-old, luckily he won't listen to this, telling him to stay on the left as we're walking down the path, right? So people coming towards us, mate, get over on the left, just let people come through. It's just, you know what? I don't want to be that old bloke, but it's just common sense, right? Because we do it on the roads. Most people do it on the footpath. It just makes sense to do it because if everyone does the same thing, it's all just common courtesy and common sense. The fact people don't do it, I mean, I guess if you're here from the US, it used to be, by the way, if you go to the US, I walked in about 15 people doing that because I'd say to the left, I walk into someone, say, oh, that's right, I've got to get on the right-hand side. So it's like driving because in America, they walk on the right. And again, that comes from their cars.
Okay? Everyone walk on the left, and if you're on an escalator, get over to the left, you bastard.
Yes, exactly. In the UK, they drive on the left, but they stand on the right on escalators, which is also even more confusing. Yeah.
No same problem in the UK. Trouble. So, yes. Hey, listen, what do you make of... I've discussed this with a lot of people, but I really want to pick your brains before I let you go. The Jimmy Kimmel attempted silencing. He's now back on air. Don't you think it's extraordinary that someone who is obviously and clearly a Donald Trump MAGA fan, and I'm talking about the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, who actually, during a press conference the other day, had a gold Trump badge on his lapel, was forced to put pressure on the network and Disney, and that we all know, and you can explain this a lot better, but there's a billion, I think it's a $6 billion merger, which is in the offing, and there's a lot of pressure on Disney and the networks, ABC, and yes, Jimmy Kimmel said things about the assassination of Kirk that some people would find unsavory. I didn't think it was the end of the world. He was suggesting that the Republicans were using the bloke who shot him to score political points. But he was taken off the air, and he was obviously put under pressure from Trump. Caroline Levitt said, I can tell you there was no pressure from the president because we were in the UK at the time. Well, Caroline, I'm sure he's got a phone. This was a massive own goal, I think, for Trump and the FCC because the First Amendment is freedom of speech. What did you make of all of this? Because you're in the media, what did you make of it?
So, mate, I'll put my cards on the table. I understand why people think Donald Trump is a force for good. Some people do. I think he's enormously and entirely unfit for the office. So let me just say that up front. Let me put the cards completely on the table.
Why is he unfit?
Because people are entitled to know that and what follows. I think you can look at the last decade of public statements and public policy decisions, and unless you want to believe he's a good guy, the character assessment you are forced to draw from that is a man who doesn't think deeply about policy, who brings his own ideologies and prejudices to the table, who wants what he wants because that's what he thinks he should do rather than actually asking for expertise or evidence or insight from anybody else. And so we're getting, and this is unkind, but not much, he reminds me of the drunk uncle at the Christmas table, right? When he's had a couple of sherbets and then he's spouting off about what he thinks and what he believes. And he's entitled to those views. But if you're going to be a public administrator, even if you are the leader, your job is not to come up with your own ideas based on your own prejudices, but actually seek information, seek advice, seek evidence, and make good decisions that actually make national sense and are good for the country. And I think he's trying to do what he thinks is good for the country. I just think he's poorly informed. And I think his character from statements he's made, we all know them, he's not a nice person. And I don't think he's someone who has the character required. Now, someone will say, yeah, but what about Biden? What about Obama? What about Harris? This is not a political view. I'm not anti-Republican in the slightest. I'm genuinely anyone but Trump. So I'm happy to put that on the record, mate. A better Republican, I'd happily have in the White House. It's not a case of Democrats versus Republicans or woke versus whatever, non-woke, unwoke, whatever it is. It's just a straight out Donald Trump is not a good man for that office. So I put that to one side. But I say it up front because it does colour my thoughts. And again, it's worth just putting on the record. Carr clearly not only a fan of the president, but appointed by the president to do the president's bidding. Like, by the way, getting back to my domain, the newly appointed member of the US Federal Reserve, who was the only person to vote for larger interest rate cuts last time they met, because that's what Trump has publicly said he wanted. So these are Trump yes men. They are fellow travelers. They are MAGAs to their core, and they want what they want. And they have a playbook either directly from Trump or because they're like Trump. They want to do the same thing. The FCC chair coming out publicly and threatening the license of a broadcaster because he didn't like something that someone said and because he wanted them to take specific action against that person is a horrible, horrible, horrible precedent. It is not due process. It is not appropriate. There was no particular evidence or regulation that was cited as cause for action. It was a straight-out threat. ABC, if you don't do something, we will do something to you. It was effectively what he said. So I'm paraphrasing, but only very, very slightly. If they don't do something, we'll do something, I think was the phrase he used. That is just straight-out government threat. It is censorship, which is bad in and of itself, I think, but it's worse than that because it's a misuse, a massive misuse of regulatory, governmental, executive pressure and tools. And my biggest concern about Trump, frankly, for all the things I just said about his character, is not the fact that I don't like the man personally. The willingness to trash democratic norms and institutions is really bad for the US. And people say, well, why do you care? Well, firstly, the US is the world's superpower. Secondly, the world's largest economy. And thirdly, we know that Trumpism is the sort of populism that is going to gain ground here and overseas. And so when you see someone say, I don't care about due process, I'm going to threaten ABC to get Kimmel off air because I don't like what he said, that is way... Now, again, if you want to say, well, the left did it too, I don't care. Okay, so let's say they did. Great. So they're both bad. That's not the defense that people think it is, right? And this is not anti-Trump for the sake of being anti-Trump. I'll give him credit. 2 days ago, he said that companies in the US should report earnings every 6 months rather than every 3 months. Now, it's not a big deal for anyone listening. I'm a finance guy. It's my life. He said it's too timely. It's too cumbersome, it's too expensive, and it makes them focus on the short term. He was 100% right. So I'm not anti-everything Trump says. I'm anti-Trump as an individual, and I'm anti-bad Trump policies, but I'm pro-good Trump policies because policies are policies, right? It doesn't matter who brings them forward. Unless you're a diehard partisan, if it's a good policy, I'll support it. If it's a bad policy, I'll not support it. When Trump trashes democratic institutions, like the FCC chair going after the ABC, or like appointing someone to the Federal Reserve Board, their version of the Reserve Bank, to specifically do what an elected official wants them to do rather than respecting the independence of that Central Reserve Bank. Those are the democratic institutions that, they get built up, they live on trust, they live on respect, they live on observance. When you start to break them down and pull them apart, this is exactly what happens. So I think he is bad for US democracy, and I think as a result, he potentially sows some seeds that we might reap here. If our pollies look over there and go, he did it, maybe I can get away with it too. And I honestly think, just go full circle, back to the end of the Morrison years as Prime Minister, like him or not, he learned from the Trump playbook, which is when you do something wrong, shut up about it, keep talking, keep moving, and the news cycle will move on. And that's how Trump gets elected. That's how he stayed in power. That's how he got re-elected. Was, I'd said all those bad things, but now look at this thing over here. Look at this new shiny thing. Morrison learned that. I'm not so sure the current government hasn't learned the same thing. It used to be, Barry O'Farrell, I said the other day, mate, resigned over a bottle of wine. Nixon resigned over Watergate. And Morrison appointed himself to 5 ministries and tried to brush it off. The standards that politicians used to hold themselves to, not even we held them to, they held themselves to, are eroding really quickly. And Trump is really, really poisonous for those democratic institutions and traditions. And that is bad for democracy. It's bad for the future. That's why I don't like what he does. That's why the FCC is a perfect example. Not only does it backfire on Trump personally, it's just a bad example because next time around, what does it do? Well, it says the next network is going to say, well, hang on, I know the FCC is coming after me. I'm going to take preemptive action. So the government will say, as you said, Trump said, it wasn't us. We didn't do anything. No, but you let it be known that you would if something happened. So you've already loaded the gun for people. They are acting out of fear, out of expectation. You get to say hands off, plausible deniability. We all know exactly what happened with ABC. We know what will happen next time. And so you've effectively put them on notice, even though you get to pretend you don't have any influence.
He's a strange character. And it's more interesting if we don't agree, but we will, because there are Trump policies that I really like. I have to agree with you.
Yep.
There are Trump policies I do agree with. There's plenty I don't, but the bloke is just, it's okay to grab women on the pussy and the way
he's an awful human being, let's be honest.
Yep. And he's a fraud as a businessman. He's an absolute fraud as a businessman. And he's continuing to conduct business while he's president of the United States.
Correct.
I mean, their constitution's different.
Made $1 billion out of launching a Trump crypto coin because he could. You know what he is? He's a fantastic salesman.
Yeah.
The left has created the circumstances for Trump to rise. So they have responsibility. Why? Because when you had Trump versus somebody else, more Americans who voted said, I don't like him. He's probably mad, but at least he's not there.
To have good government, you need good opposition, and they've got shit opposition. And at the moment here in Australia, we have shit opposition, and so you get
we absolutely do.
You reap what you sow. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the midterms. Hey, listen, Scotty, we got a bit serious there.
Sorry.
I tell you one more thing. I'll tell you about, and we'll discuss it next time, and we might even have to do it closer to the 11th of November. I get up very early because I record people from all over the world at different times, and they reran. Where did I find it? It might have been a random thing on YouTube. I watched the whole of The Dismissal again, the TV miniseries about the sacking of Gough Whitlam. It is. Have you seen it? Oh,
no, I haven't. I've got nothing to put on my list.
It is
recent or old?
Oh no, it's. When was it made? I'll find out for 83. But wait till you see the cast. Wait till you see the cast. Max Phipps plays Gough. You got John Stanton, who plays Malcolm Fraser absolutely brilliantly. The great late Bill Hunter playing Rex Connor, the Minister for Minerals, who did the Komlani Loans Affair. Oh, you had the great late John Mellion playing Sir John Kerr. Peter Carroll plays Hayden, but he's also the narrator. It is really, really, really well done. Could you do me a favour? Because you got nothing to do. Can you try and watch it?
Yeah, I will. Ed Devereaux, Skippy fame. I haven't
got it in front of me. I'm sure he played Phil. Yeah, Ed Devereaux. Who, by the way,
did. Well done.
I've interviewed Tony Bonner, the chopper pilot, Jerry from Skippy.
Oh, right.
Oh, he's a good mate.
Yeah.
He's a good mate of mine. Did you know his great-grandfather was the first mayor of Manly and the first president of the Lifesaving Club?
I did not. That's brilliant.
And my grandparents lived at Queenscliff in Bonner Avenue.
That's awesome.
Anyway, he said that Ed hated the show because it typecast him.
Okay.
Because you remember he was also in there, A Weird Mob.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, the John O'Grady book.
Yes.
But anyway, geez, I'm going bing bong here. That's what my daughter calls me, bing bong, because I go from one topic to another. Could you please, try and watch The Dismissal, 1983? Yes. The casting is just superb.
Oh, great.
And I would love you to watch it, and maybe we should talk about it closer to the 11th of November.
Great idea. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check that out, mate. Thank you.
Well, may you say, God save the Queen, because nothing will save the government. From this day forward, Remembrance Day, November 11, 1975, will go down in history as Kerr's Kerr.
Yeah.
The proclamation handed to me just now by the Governor-General's Secretary has been countersigned Malcolm Fraser.
Brilliant.
There you are.
Brilliant. And then Norman Gunston, of course, with a cameo.
Gary McDonald. There is a great story about that, how Gary McDonald just happened to be in Canberra at that moment, gets into character, puts the gear on as Norman Gunston, and goes up the front stairs where Whitlam and Hawke are, giving that amazing speech, and goes up with his microphone and it goes up to Bob Hawke, who was then leader of the ACTU, and starts to ask him questions, and Hawke says, "Not now, mate. This is too serious." But he had to go. How amazing was it that Norman Gunston happened to be there?
Incredible. It's such an Australian iconic kind of moment too, with the whole lot. That's fantastic.
I mean, to this day, Australia's biggest constitutional crisis, where a government and the Prime Minister have been dismissed, their commission taken away by a man elected by nobody, the Governor-General, who was the Queen's representative, head of state. And it's interesting, if you look at the Gough Whitlam Sir John Kerr letters, it is very interesting now that we can find out 50 years later that he did not ask the palace's permission because he said, "I don't need to." There is lots of correspondence to Her Majesty's private secretary about the turmoil that's going on, the blocking of supply, the money bills not going through, and him just keeping them informed as to what's happening here in Australia. But at no point did he say, he said constitutionally I can dismiss the government, and they never told him no. They said, you do what you have to do, but it'd be wise to make that the very, very last option, to try every other option. And, of course, Gough said, okay, well, I'll call a half-Senate election. But the Governor-General wanted a full election, and he'd only been in there 2.5 years, remember? Anyway, it's called The Dismissal. Please watch it.
I will check it out, mate.
I got to go. You got to go.
All right.
Thank you. Hey, listen, thanks for the chat.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy it, mate. It's always a fun, wide-ranging chat, and it's hopefully your listeners are enjoying it as well. Hopefully the Vice Captain will be back next time, though. The Vice Captain will be back, and so too will the Millennial, because there's a few more topics I want to touch on. But today we sort of went bing bong. I love it. We just riffed. And folks, do not pay $2,200 for your children's paintings. Do not. You'll never make the money back. Scotty Phillips, Uru. Well, look, thank you so much for sitting through episode 56. I cannot believe it. God, we've covered some ground, and we've got more up our sleeve, Kelsey. I don't know what's up our sleeve, but as Ricky Lee Jones once said, I hope it's not contagious. Guess what we're having tonight? We're having this special, I don't know, it's a beef brisket, and it's cooked in a deep dish pan. But you know your mum was a child of the 70s. It's actually seasoned with marijuana. Nikki likes to call it her special pot roast.
Oh, my God. Is that the thought of the day?
Goodbye. Need a post-show pick-me-up? I know what I'm grabbing. Nature Bee's new Power Bee Bite Bars, packed with protein, boosted with pollen, and they're bloody tasty too. And they're just $14.95 a box. Pair them with your Power Pollen capsules. You're going to thank me later. You can grab a 6-month supply of Power Pollen for just $160, and they'll throw in an extra month and 2 bars of their famous pollen and honey soap for free. Nature Bee's got everything you need to keep energized all day, every day. Do not wait. The ultimate wellness routine is just a click away. Head to the description now.